Being after 7 o'clock, we'll call the January 10th meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
We're going to rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all.
First order of business is the approval of minutes. They've been read and reviewed.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Small project, 311 Stevens Street, for a deck, I believe. Tree removal, that's right, I'm sorry.
So you have a letter in front of you, also something from the tree company. You guys want to come up and so they can ask questions, or you should all have some photos of the trees. I took a few photos too when I was out there recently. Did a little markup, but
Thank you.
Okay. Jen, just before they start, why don't you give us the gist of the project so we can...
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Yep,
small
so-
project, cutting trees.
you can see sort of the list of trees. I think only isn't one of them outside? One of them's outside the buffer zone. The rest are within the 100-foot buffer zone from a plan that is quite old, from when the house was built. The swale in front of the house at that point in time was considered jurisdictional. It drains down to the wetland, which is between this house and 271 Stevens Street, where you just approved the construction of 2 new houses. So they have that wetland off to the side, and then the swale in the front. There is some question as to whether the swale would really qualify as jurisdictional at this point, but we're not raising that. They're just taking it for what it is when the house was permitted. 2 of the trees, which, again, unless they're safety hazards, they're both sapling size. They're not very big, and National Grid has pruned the heck out of one of them so that it sort of looks like a scarecrow. But those are in the 25-foot no disturb right along the edge of the swale. You can see those. And the majority of them, although they are healthy, they're large Norway maples, they're near the house. The owners have concerns about the proximity. There are 2 large black cherries that they want to limb only. And then 1 snag that's down that they'd like to take out. So
What letter would you call this project?
there is no defined small project for it, so it would be an L.
Okay.
Are you going to do pre-construction on this? Or the
I don't think
trees
a-
are already marked?
Yeah, the trees are already marked. It would just be a matter of, you have the photos of the ones that are down near the swale, whether or not.
I can see some that are leaning toward the house and some that are in the wires. I would agree with those.
Well, I think we wouldn't do the ones in the wires as a small project, but if you want to let them take them down, I'm happy to write our usual hazard tree letter,
Okay.
because they wouldn't qualify for small project status, but we can certainly, if you think that's okay, we can write that letter.
Yeah, the one that's on, I think it's J. Yeah, no, that's not J. Those are leaning toward the house, I can see them.
These 2 are down by the road. The big ones, I think that you're talking about are,
They're in the front. Yeah, B.
they're in front.
Yeah, B.
B and E are the ones in the wires that are in the 25,
Right.
Okay. But they've asked to have them removed?
Yeah, they're going to...
just for reasons of being in the wires. But again, that wouldn't be a small project. If you want them to be able to do that, I can just write a hazard tree letter on those.
Okay. The other question I have is, you're going to just stump them? Or you're not grinding them, right?
Right, yeah, so the quote from Bartlett, they specified they would just stump them as, I believe it says, as close to the ground as possible was their wording for that.
Okay. Al, any questions?
No questions.
Deb?
No questions.
Doug? Motion?
I move that we consider this project to be, fall under the letter L, small projects.
All those in a second?
Sorry, I need a
A
second.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
And I
Opposed?
also make an amendment to have Jennifer include the hazard tree letter along with the order.
Yep, I have a note to do that. I don't think we need a motion for that. If you do agree that they're hazard trees, then I can just write that letter.
So
And
it
then-
sounds like we agree, and the project is going to fall under letter L, and finally, I move that we consider this to be a small project under that letter.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you, all set.
And then, so this would be, we would approve as proposed with a post-construction inspection and stumps to be cut flush.
Okay.
As part of the motion, you want to
As
make a
part of the
separate one?
motion, yeah.
Okay.
As amended, Jen.
You don't think we should have a pre-construction so we know what trees in case it gets changed?
We've already been out there twice.
Oh, okay,
I really
that's
think
fine.
they're good to go.
All right,
They
then we're good.
know what they're doing at this point.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
NOI 242-1719 Mass Ave is continued till January 24th.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
so Mass Ave is not going to be heard tonight, guys, if anybody's hit the Mass
I
Ave.
don't see anybody.
Okay.
Either, if you want to bail. Sure. Enjoy.
Do we have any more continuances, Jen, that came in
Yep, I
late?
think the next one is a continuance as well.
Boxford Street, yeah, right, you told me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Boxwood wants to go to January 24th.
242-1721, continue to January 24th.
So moved. Second.
Third.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's yes. It was a little confusing because it has two there.
Good.
Is that the only one, Jen? Those two?
I'm looking. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Next one is 242-1724 High Street.
21 High Street.
So you have a couple review letters, one from TEC and then a response back from the applicant. Not much has changed since you've last seen the project, with the exception of a fire access way. Right? I think that's the
Right.
only new thing on the plan, right?
That
Oh,
is.
and they moved, you had asked that the outfall from the existing pipe be moved back some, and that's shown on the new plan as well.
I don't have any questions. Should I
Is
talk
there
to
a,
Jen?
is there a, Phil,
have any
a
questions, or you want me to
particular
present
plan
this?
you'd like up?
What was,
Maybe the grading plan?
Okay.
Sheet,
let
7.
him give us the revisions and we'll move to.
Okay.
So just to catch you up, we did meet with the fire department after we met with you, and to satisfy the fire code, we added a fire access lane that Phil will walk you through in the corner of the plan. We've been to planning board twice, and we received some comments from tech, which we'll go through with you on some of the major, or some of the points that we feel need to be addressed with the commission.
Okay.
Give us the
I don't know why that's
presentation.
not moving.
So we're interested in just briefly hearing about your responses to the peer review comments that there was disparity.
Yep. So, for the record, my name is Phil Henry with Civil Design Group. Largely, the comments have been addressed, and I think TEC had responded with a second round of comments, and the majority of them are addressed, although there are a few items, most notably two, that we'd like to discuss with the commission tonight, as this will play an integral role in finalizing our submission. Is the commission in receipt of my supplemental waiver memorandum?
Yes,
And
they have
alternative
that.
analysis? Okay,
So that's dated January 5th?
that's correct.
Yeah, we do have that.
So, we can resolve all items, including the ones that are listed in the waivers. However, we wanted to just bring those two items to your attention for consideration, as we think where we, as currently designed, it's a more appropriate design relative to what's required. So, should I walk through those two particular items, or would you like me to take the lead from the commission, or Jen?
Do you want to hear the?
Yeah, no, I think those are the two things you need to discuss.
So essentially, you're asking for two waivers.
Yeah, two waivers so that we can move forward with finalizing the
Okay,
plan.
yeah, go ahead.
So the first one was it's related to, and I'll use my laser pointer here. It's when you have a land use of higher potential pollutant load, which is, one of the standards is sites that receive more than 1,000 vehicle trips per day, which this site does as a whole. However, this site, or this section of the site is uniquely positioned such that a section of the parking lot will not be subject to 1,000 vehicles per day, nor will it even come close to 1,000 vehicles per day. What I mean by that is this area right in here represents a high point. Everything from here down flows towards High Street, and pretty much the rest of the site flows towards High Street. However, this portion of this parking lot, which is about 35 spaces, flows east, opposite of pretty much the entire site. And what we propose is a water swale here with a forebay, and that gets connected and directly discharged to the pond, which is one of our analysis points. So it's not going to be subject to the high-intensity use that the other portions of the site are currently subject to and which are currently designed for.
Is that, are you referring to that as the isolated parking lot?
Exactly,
Okay.
yep.
All right, go ahead.
Nor does it have the potential to be subject to that high-intensity use in the future because we're at the rear of the property line and we're bounded by a stone dust path, a pond, riverfront area, and property line. So we think that water quality swale and forebay is sufficiently sized to handle half an inch of runoff, which is I'll use the term normal standard rather than 1 inch. That water quality swale is actually designed for something more than a half an inch, but because of site constraints, if we were to be required to handle up to 1 inch, because we're bounded by the property line and the building and by other stormwater features, we're essentially going to have to introduce small retaining walls to gain that volumetric area to handle that 1 inch. So, we think this is, I guess in my opinion, is a fairly reasonable request, knowing that it's adequately sized for the runoff that is proposed to be contributing to it.
Did you submit a basis for the assumption of a half-inch of runoff depth?
Yes, yeah.
Is it included
And,
in the
yeah,
request?
in the report, and they acknowledge, TEC acknowledges that.
Okay. All right. Okay, keep going. You want to take questions on that first one?
Yeah, on this one. Yeah, good.
I don't have any.
Doug, you have any questions?
All right, so go to
Okay.
waiver 2.
The second waiver was, it was under this is a request from a waiver from a local regulation. I believe, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually in the stormwater bylaw with regards
No.
to an infiltration.
I ended up finding it it's in your 50-foot no disturb.
That's right, you said.
But it kind of falls along the lines of the emergency vehicle access, that if there is no alternative, it's allowed. It doesn't actually require a waiver, so they've done the alternatives analysis, which they can explain. But it's not you don't have to vote. If you agree with the alternatives analysis and this is the best location for this infiltration pipe, then you can approve it as is.
Say that again.
You know how for pavement, we have, if an access, let's say a driveway or whatever,
Yeah.
if there's no alternative but to put it in the 50,
Yep.
it doesn't need to be a waiver request. It needs to be an alternatives analysis, and you need to prove there is no, so this is for infiltration or stormwater structures within the 50-foot no-build
So how
zone.
is it not a waiver?
Because the bylaw regulations specifically say it is allowed if.
If, okay. So they need, and you have to submit your basis for the if.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead, let's hear that.
So here's our if. What we're discussing is, if you look here, there's a dark black line that's surrounded by a gray hatch. That represents our subsurface infiltration system. And that system is simply a 15-inch pipe. It's just a pipe. It's not what you would see on a larger site, a subsurface Coltech system or concrete galley or even above-ground basin. It's simply a pipe that has holes in it that's surrounded by crushed stone. That takes the roof runoff from the proposed building. So it's clean runoff that receives that runoff today. We positioned it appropriately just over 10 feet beyond the foundation, which is a regulation per DEP. However, it does fall within 8 feet of the edge of wetland. I will note that the edge of wetland is not the edge of water, which is a controlled elevation by the recently installed weir. So we had, our initial submission had considered that regulation relative to edge of water and not edge of wetland, for which we would have been more than 50 feet.
Not 8 feet. It's not 8 feet from the wetland, it's like 48
No, it's 8 feet
feet.
it's 8 feet within.
Into the
It's 8 feet within the
Into the 50
50-foot
foot.
buffer. I apologize. So it's 42 feet.
Into the BVW or?
No, it's portions of it, the majority of it is right at the 50-foot.
Okay.
Portions of it, he said, do intrude into that 50-foot no-build zone 8 feet.
Yeah, so I'll correct myself. So worst case, it encroaches to within 42 feet of the edge of wetland.
Okay.
So it encroaches 8 feet into the 50-foot
8
no
feet
buffer.
in.
That
Okay.
sounds better.
Okay, I got you. That does sound better. All
So-
right. All right, go ahead.
I'll add that, as you know, this is an existing lawn area where infiltration occurs today. Infiltration is occurring as we speak, or when it's not freezing, into that area. However, we simply wanted to do it in a more responsible fashion, take those roof leaders directly underground and introduce it directly into the subsurface soil. We had submitted an alternatives analysis because groundwater is very shallow and we need to meet the requisite separation to groundwater. There's a balance game with respect to making sure you're above your 2 feet of separation and you have sufficient soil above that system. So for instance, if we were to be, if the commission were to require us respect that 50-foot, I had submitted an alternatives analysis, and essentially the area of infiltration would be isolated to this, I guess, easterly edge of the building, because there's also horizontal physical strains such as the stone dust path, the building, riverfront, and so on. However, including an infiltration area on the easterly edge would require this whole site to be raised up 1 foot, because everything is simply connected. We can't afford to capture runoff via catch basins and invert, because we just lose that rim to invert separation. Secondly, we could essentially flip this infiltration system and put it underneath the parking lot, but that would require the site to be raised an additional foot over the foot. So we're raising the site a few feet, artificially so, more than what is currently being proposed, which this building is currently 2 feet above the existing lawn area, just to get some separation to groundwater to begin with. I'll also note that putting an infiltration system upstream of the building would not be in keeping with that regulation that Jennifer had referenced, whereas we would not be maintaining the natural hydrology towards a resource area, in this case the pond. So for those reasons, we thought that the infiltration system was appropriately located downstream of its respective watershed and proximate to the resource area that is trying to recharge.
Questions?
I have no questions.
I have some other questions on, not on these alternatives, but on some other stuff. Deb?
I don't have any questions.
Doug?
So, Jen, question for you now. What action do you need us to take on these two, for lack of a better term, waiver requests, even though one of them may not be a waiver? What do you need us to do? Is that
I don't
something
think
we have
either
to
of them
address
are
now?
waivers. The other is just that if you were to, the LUPL, as it's called, the land under, the higher potential pollutant loading, if they were to, this part of the site, you can't separate it out. The site's a LUPL. Like, it's subject to more than 1,000 car trips a day. I think they're making a justification why this particular basin doesn't need to be sized for the 1 inch. The rest of the site is treated appropriately, but this portion of the site, because it's just the end of this parking lot that this
No,
basin
I get that.
takes.
That was proposal one, the
Yep.
isolated parking lot. So that's a way.
That's a stormwater standard. No, that's not a waiver
not a waiver
request.
either.
It's a standard, you could say they're not meeting, but I think they're trying to provide
So
justification
can
that
that
they
be
don't need to
incorporated
meet
by
it.
design, and we just approve it in the order of conditions?
Correct, if you agree with their justification.
All right, so
The
let's,
second is, again, allowed if they present an alternative that you agree with, that it is appropriately located and having it partially in the 50-foot either contributes to the hydrology being correct or that it, and that there is no alternative. And as they're saying, if they put it on the upside of the building,
Yeah.
the water's, it's going to have to go through the foundation to make it to the,
or raise the lot 2 feet.
right.
Okay,
Which,
gotcha.
design-wise, doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, this site, as you all know, is already pretty well constructed with parking lots, parking garages, old mill complex. It's pretty dense. The fire access road is the same sort of situation. They're going to use porous or pervious pavers. They did provide us, I asked for a detail, we did get that. I think the alternatives to that are access all the way around the building or extending the access to where the current stormwater system is and then having to relocate the stormwater system, which, again, probably not feasible. So I think the plan to locate the emergency access was well thought out with the fire department.
So technically, there are no waivers per se.
There are waivers, but they're not, these new things aren't the waivers. The original waivers which were requested were for the path, right?
Yeah, good.
For the record, Julie Von Drock, wetland scientist for the project. We have a very lengthy NOI narrative here with compliance with some of the waivers. There's a small portion of work within riverfront area, and it's basically just maintaining and improving the existing stone dust path. So technically it was a riverfront, so we did do a whole alternative analysis and alternatives to that. So that's up in that eastern corner.
That's an existing condition?
What's that?
That's an existing condition?
Yeah, it's existing condition. Again, it's a path we've been maintaining, so there might be a little rerouting of it and just reestablish of stone dust, because that has washed away from another issue we'll discuss in a minute. So basically, the waivers were little work in riverfront area. There is some work within the 25-foot no disturbance zone, which includes planting enhancements along the top of bank in the area, and a small extension of the stone dust path near the new weir structure. So the new weir structure that was just built, that's within a disturbed previously parking area. So again, just technically following on the compliance with your bylaws, we noted every little thing within that work being, and alternative analysis has been provided, and compliance with all the local standards. So those are kind of the main waivers. There was also, in the first round of the notice of intent narrative, we discussed the issue off-site from Walker Road. There's drainage coming onto our site that's been dumping for many, many years. There's an upgradient catch basin system. It just deposits on the property, which is scour the property for years. Scour would actually just run off right into the pond. That pipe is not on our property, so RCG has looked into potentially capturing that runoff and treating it, so again, before it discharges into Mill Pond. So what they had looked at is we are capable of doing that. It's going to be directed to a catch basin, I believe a storm scepter, and then it's going to tie into an existing 12-inch pipe that is located on the property. Tying into that 12-inch pipe, that also requires some minor work within the 25-foot no disturb, which is currently grassed.
So you're catching it off-site?
We are catching it,
We are, so the Walker Road drain line
Yeah.
is right here. So it's depositing on, it's actually National Grid's property, which is this rectangular area here, but it makes its way on our property and has, over time, has eroded the stone dust path. And so we are proposing to capture it via a catch basin on our site via depression, and then bring it underground, treat it with a proprietary unit, and then tie into that existing line that's currently there today.
Grid's okay with that?
No, they're not on grid property. We had talked about possibly doing something on grid, trying to get an
So how are they going to catch it
easement.
if it's on grid property?
No, it runs right across.
You're going to catch it on your...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right.
But that ultimate outlet is another of the waivers. They're going to pull it back. It's currently depositing in the pond, and they're going to pull it back into the no disturb zone.
So it'll just be temporary disturbance within the no disturb, and it'll be underground.
No questions.
Well, I have two questions. I just saw the North Andover fire truck. Where is the road, the access road to the fire prevention going to be?
This year.
Just right there?
Yep.
Okay. Is there a detail on that on this one?
There's a fire access plan. It's the last plan view. Jen, if you want to, it's the last plan before the.
I'm just interested in what the
Oh, is it this
spec
one?
is for
Right
the
here?
subgrade.
Yep, that's it.
So you guys didn't provide me with a subgrade spec, right? You just provided the spec for the stone?
For the paver?
Right,
Because
I had asked about the subgrade, and that was something, trying to get like a detail of it.
Okay.
a detail of the subgrade that, because the way it's set up, all your stormwater from that building is gonna go to that front where the walk is and where your fire truck
That one?
access is, correct?
Here?
Yeah, there, and, no, across the front, right?
Here?
Where the black line is, that's where the stormwater's going? No, it's
Are
going
you
to
talking
the
about
front.
back here?
Yes,
That's a subsurface pipe where the roof is directly discharging into that.
right. But, so you're not gonna disturb that sidewalk at all?
The sidewalk is on the front here.
The walk, the stone
walking
dust
path?
walk?
Oh,
The
The stone, yeah,
pathway.
the stone dust's right near the edge of the
No, we're not
pond.
proposing to disturb the stone dust path in this section here. We propose to slightly reroute it here and repair it. But no, we are not proposing any improvement here, which is one of the design goals. We didn't really want to touch that.
Okay. My concern is the runoff from the roof is gonna head that way. If this-
It
isn't
will not, because
Yeah.
it's going to be captured, it's not going to be daylighted on the grass, it's going to be piped directly
Underneath. So all right, so there's not gonna be any open water going underneath the walkway? It's gonna
No.
be piped?
Yep, it's going to be piped.
Because I was concerned that, I'm looking at the subgrade, and I would have leaned toward crushed stone underneath for subgrade instead of gravel, just for the flow. And also on the top, if Julie's mentioned about enhancing, redoing the walkway.
No, if there's any areas that have been scoured out, they're just going to replace it with the stone
Replace
dust,
it
which
with
they
stone
usually do
dust.
as normal maintenance.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of just plain stone dust because it doesn't have anything to grab. I would like to see crushed waste. It has like 3/8 stone in it
Okay.
to kind of hold the stone dust together. Because that area is going to, I'm sure, is going to be wet in the springtime. And instead of stone dust. If you're gonna enhance, go over the whole thing, I just assume you go over.
I think
go over
the
with
stone dust has actually worked really well for the path in that particular area, and they're gonna, where it was washing out, it was strictly because that runoff was coming from Walker Road.
But the little bit of stone content in the stone dust, it's not a lot of stone. It's just a little
Well, I
stone.
don't want them to use crushed wrap, I thought I
No.
heard. Okay.
It has 3/8 stone in it. In the stone dust, that's all it is, huh?
Crusher tailings?
Yes. This way, it'll help control the erosion,
Okay.
and it'll kind of, it tightens it a little bit, but it's still porous.
Maybe when it comes to final, I think we can write the order, but maybe you can find me some kind of reference material for it.
You know what I'm talking about. We
I-
call it crusher
I
waste
think
or
so.
crusher
But the
tailings.
size that you want to target is 3/8.
Yeah, it's just 3/8 stone mixed in with the stone dust. And that'll help you when your erosion problems also.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
if
that
it's
little
okay
bit of
with the
stone.
commission, I'll work with Jennifer on like a percentage.
And it's cheaper than stone dust.
That's always good.
Okay, that's the only questions
Yeah,
I have.
and I'm still interested at some point in getting the final detail on the,
Yeah, absolutely. Fire
you gave me a
truck.
pavement detail, like a materials detail, but it didn't actually have the construction detail for
paver,
that.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll add that to the plan.
Yep. Yep.
So So, Jennifer, you're more concerned about the sub-base rather than the actual material itself?
Right, I think specifying that is good, and there was a lot of description in there of what it should be, but I know the commission generally likes to see a construction detail
Is
of
there a
that.
preference that the commission has on just material and thickness, or can we propose something?
Well, the material thickness is fine. It's what, 2 in 1?
No, the sub-base thickness.
Sub-base
Sub-base.
on the pervious pavers. I just think we want to see that when it's constructed, it's actually going to be pervious,
Okay.
and that, someone just doesn't go in there and put paver stone down and just assume that that's,
Sure, yeah.
No,
Okay.
like a layer of crushed stone, and then...
Yeah, crushed stone, and make sure there's no poly sand in between.
Right,
Okay.
all right. Deb?
No questions.
Doug? Jack, you up to speed yet?
No questions.
All right. So we need to continue, correct?
Well, what are they looking for? I don't know.
Well, there's no
So,
waivers. You're
no, there
saying.
are still waivers, so I think we could vote on the waivers, the ones that are requested, the ones Julie went through. I think what we were saying was the ones that they discussed tonight are allowable for the emergency access and the infiltration pipe that juts into the 50.
So the first two items that you're talking about were referenced in the January 5th letter.
Right, and you're just
Paragraphs
accepting
1 and 2.
their alternatives analysis fulfills the requirements, if you agree with that.
Those were the first ones we discussed.
Right.
We should sort them out so we know what we're talking about.
Right.
Get a lot of
The remainder of the waiver requests
Are on the attachment
are,
A.
right.
So let's take them one at a time. Do you want us to move or vote on the first letter, Jen? Is that what you want? Procedurally, what works for you, so we can move this?
Let me just go to the waiver requests. So we generally just approve them as the requested waivers.
All right.
So,
So do you want to incorporate the January 5th letter into attachment A? For purposes of voting?
that's fine. The request that they're seeking is a waiver of section 3.4 of the bylaw. And then they list in section 7.0 of their analysis the waivers that they need. So I think it's fine just to vote once on the requested waivers of section 3.4.
Yeah, which we have attachment A is got
Correct.
a lot of stuff. That's got what you referred to. So do you want to take both of those, incorporate them together, and have them moved or not moved, or what's your pleasure?
The other one doesn't need to be voted on. The other one was...
So don't vote on this one? Okay.
It'll be a record document, but it's just, you just need to agree with their justification. If that's the case, if you do, then it's all set.
All right.
And we're just voting on the waivers requested in attachment A.
So, Mr. Chairman, before we do that, we should see if anybody has any questions on,
We have in the bylaw also.
okay, received.
So would you say that the alternatives analysis was on 7.0?
Paragraph 7.0 of attachment A. So you'll keep going, go to page 12, Mr. Chairman, that's the start of it.
So that's for the stone dust path.
That's 7.1 is alternative, stone dust, 7.2.
Again, they requested a waiver of the infiltration outflow. That's for work in the 25-foot no disturb zone, even though it's temporary. The fire access road does not require voting because it's the best alternative. So I think it's just for the temporary disturbance, the planting in the no disturbance zone.
Yep, basically maintenance, slight realignment and maintenance of the existing path. Extension of the path near the weir, so there is a small area that will be extended to continue the continuity of the path. The outlet for the underground infiltration system, there is one outlet that's like within 1 to 2 feet within that grassed area. That was included. Working riverfront, that was just, we met the alternative analysis for that. So it's primary, maintaining the existing path, a slight extension of it, and technically that one outfall, which is
In the planting.
in the plantings, which is the buffer zone enhancement.
These are all covered in 7.0, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
You want to see
Need a motion?
if anybody has any questions here
No, they
before we go
said-
to the butters?
Do you have any questions? Deb?
I don't have any questions.
Butters
Any
for
butters that
the
wanna
High
be-
Street project?
Want to be heard? Would you be kind enough to go up to the podium and just give us your name and...
Hi, Linda Fuca, 4 East Water Street. I'd just like to know, get some information on the past permits and applications that were put in. I can go down to your office and look at those. Those are public record.
There's nothing specific for the path, it's just on their plan.
I mean,
You can get a
permits,
copy of the plan.
permits when the path was put in and all that land was changed. I
The
can,
path
that's
wasn't part
public
of the
record.
last filing, was it? No, I think the path has been in place long before there were permits for this place. Permits only exist for anything that happens sort of post-1980, so there is a filing on record. We don't have any prior filings for the path. We don't have prior filings for the construction of the building.
Where it's put in a no disturb area though.
There was no disturb when it was constructed. The no disturb came into effect in the
95, right?
95,
Or 85?
96.
No, you're referring to the bylaw?
The no disturb and no build zones.
1985 approximately, we adopted the, am I correct? The 2550, no build, no disturb, approximately 1985?
Sounds about
Plus or
right.
minus. If I'm off, I'm only off by a year or two, but the town's bylaw was voted in somewhere around 1985, 1986. When I came on the commission in 1990, it was already in existence, and it had already been to the Supreme Judicial Court on test. So, mid-'80s, approximately.
So
Okay, how about state law for
The
wetlands?
Wetland Protection Act, what year was the wetland?
70s. But again, this structure existed prior to that.
So this structure predates, this structure was built 100 and some odd years ago. It predated most of, I know what you're asking, and I apologize for not having a good answer for you. It predates most of the permitting, back when those mills were constructed. So when they try to do alterations, repairs, additions, modifications, then we can have them comply with the existing laws now. But a lot of the existing conditions, they're entitled to maintain, if it's not something new.
All right,
I don't know
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question or not. I guess it doesn't, sorry. Unless you guys have something.
You're welcome to see
some
all our prior
historical data you
filings
can-
on the mills, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I've reviewed most of what we have for there, and I don't recall that that was ever part of a filing. It's just been a known existing condition.
Julie, if you can find some historical data that would be helpful,
When the path
could you
was-
send it to Jen and she can,
Yeah, if there's any photos or it might be in historic
anything that
areas.
would be helpful to,
Right, so,
are there any other abutters or none answered?
so we need a waiver request.
So that, we have a request in front of us, Mr. Chairman, on attachment A, paragraph 7.0. I would, I'll go out on a limb and I'll move that we accept the document as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. And we are gonna talk about the material, right? Because you have it listed as stone dust. You have it listed as stone dust, and we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
that.
I'll put that in the order, which I'll draft for the next meeting. I think the planning board meets next week for their last hearing, and I would anticipate that unless there's any major changes at that hearing, that we would close an issue at the next meeting.
Okay.
Does that timeline sound?
All right,
Is
so
there-
we need
Jen,
a
is
motion to
there any other
continue.
business we need to consider on this tonight? Or?
Nope, I think that touches on, unless you have any other,
So we can move forward with our design?
right, waivers as requested are approved.
And our letter that we submitted, which is no longer a waiver, but our justification for the two items discussed, we can
It's
proceed.
acceptable to the
Okay.
commission.
Okay. All right,
So
great.
you're requesting a continuance 2 weeks or 4 weeks? What are you requesting?
2.
2? Okay.
I think that's fine.
You can always change it if you want. So I'll move that we continue for 2 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one has no DEP number, so we will be very brief. We'll just open it. It's 24216 Beaver Brook Road.
I'm just going to give everybody a chance to shuffle out.
Yep. We just want to kind of move it along. We have a very full agenda.
So I tried to call TJ today to talk this through, but I didn't get a hold of him. Good luck.
Good evening,
Okay.
Commissioners. Happy New Year to us. My name is Scott Cameron with the Moore and Cameron Group. I'm filling in tonight for our Christiansen Sergi division. TJ had 4 other meetings to be at tonight, so I'm subbing in. We have a place of business at 160 Summer Street in Haverhill, Mass. I did hear you. There is no DEP file number assigned to this yet, so I wanted to at least maybe explain the project. If we have any initial discussion, comments, questions, we can get through that tonight, and then I do expect to come back hopefully in 2 weeks on a continuance. I'm here tonight on behalf of Mr. Babu Patel. Mr. Patel is here. He's standing in the back there. He's the owner of the property. And this house was built about 20 years ago, 1998. As you can see in the plan, it is entirely within the 75-foot setback to a bordering vegetated wetland. A portion of it is also within the 50-foot no disturb setback to a bordering vegetated wetland. The wetland was delineated by Steve Erickson, and Jen, I believe you walked it and you asked, we're going to end up connecting flags A4 to A8
Yep.
based on your review, which is just a little bump out. We're just going to eliminate that bump out. It doesn't impact the buffer zone on the site or what we're talking about. And what Mr. Patel is proposing is based on his desire to continue to live in the house and put a single-story addition for a new master bedroom. The commute of the second floor living in the colonial is becoming taxing, and the master bedroom would allow him single-level living in the dwelling. So this is an effort to stay in the community and stay in this house. And because of the location of the house, within the 75-foot entirely and a portion within the 50, we have requested 2 waivers. The addition is 14-foot wide by 32 feet long. It matches the width of the house. This fits into the floor plan of the house as they push it out the 14 feet. And we've accordingly requested 2 waivers under the North Andover Wetlands bylaw to extend this into the no disturb and within the no build zone because of the placement of that existing house. I will say the total footprint area of the addition is 448 square feet. It is relatively small. Within the 50-foot, there's 140 square feet, just 140 square feet. And there won't be any need to clear any trees or vegetation other than the turf lawn to make way for the addition. This is an existing yard. And I think the only other thing I left out at the beginning was there is a certified vernal pool in this wetland, and that's why the setbacks go to 50 and 75 on this particular case. So it's a very simple project. I didn't have much more to present to you tonight, so I'd be happy to.
Jack?
Yeah, I see, yeah, I understand the need for this, and it's, I think we're all approaching that need all ourselves. I see that, you've delineated the closest corner to the wetland to be 38.5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It gets further as the construction proceeds. It's a request for a waiver from the 50-foot no-build zone.
No disturb zone.
No,
It's 50-foot no disturb because of the vernal
oh, it's
pool.
50-foot no disturb,
Just-
right.
Just to note that when constructed, this house just met the 50-foot setback under the 2550, but it was constructed lawfully and with those setbacks. There is another issue to discuss, but we can leave that for after the addition discussion.
Yeah. I guess I have a question. It's shown on the plan that there's a tree line there, and it's hard for me to I guess I can kind of see a tree line on the aerials. It looks closer on the plan, though. That's I guess my question.
Yeah, it's probably capturing the drip line on the trees a little bit too, so we're taking the furthest edge of the vegetation on the survey conservatively.
You know, whenever we consider waivers like this, we typically ask for better protection of no disturb zones, such as this 50-foot no disturb zone. And I'm trying to think of what I would recommend for you. I think whatever it is, it should include monumentation, and I think it should be along that tree line to protect as much of the no disturb zone as we can. I'll just, to the commission, I would suggest maybe consider a row of boulders spaced, 15 feet or so along that line, in the vicinity of the addition, with monuments on them that alert people in the backyard that is a protected no disturb zone, buffer zone. And that's about all I have.
Thank you. Al?
I have no questions.
I have a couple. How long has this homeowner owned the house?
He built the house, so yeah,
He
just about
built the
20
house.
years. Yeah.
Okay. On Jen's recommendations, there's a deck and I gotta get the right one.
And a patio.
I have it here. A deck and a patio that was built in the back of the house between 2008 and 2012, and there were no building or wetland permits.
The patio was approved and was on the as-built plan. It's the deck that's new, and there are no permits for it.
Okay.
I had asked TJ, this sort of came about because I had said the existing conditions plan should contain the existing conditions.
Sure.
And so I had said maybe he could use the as-built plan from the certificate of compliance to put that deck/patio on there, but when I looked, there was only a patio. So then I consulted the building file to see if there may have been some sign-off for a deck, and there was none. So the deck is not, to our knowledge, legally there.
Okay, this is the first I'm hearing of it, but I'll definitely do some
Okay.
homework on it. It's obviously in the picture here when it was put on. Are the dates on this as well? Perfect.
This one, he wants,
Yep.
there's an aerial, you have an aerial there?
Yeah, Jennifer gave me a
Okay.
copy of that.
And this doesn't have a DEP number, so they can choose to respond, but again, I just did a quick check of our files, and I didn't see anything there.
Okay. And I understand the wetlands has creeped in over the years, so,
It is Beaver Brook.
yeah. So aside from that, I like at least reflected on the as-built, but we also would like to see, I don't know if we're gonna do an after the fact, that'll be up to the commission. After the fact filing for the deck.
I would note that the deck doesn't encroach any further toward the wetland than the approved patio that was on the house, so things are sort of in keeping with what was out there, and there are no, brush dumping issues or those sorts of things. I mean, the lot is pretty much as the day it was developed.
But the deck would have required a filing.
With both you and it should have had a building permit, and I'm not saying you don't have one, maybe you have the data for that, or,
Well,
I'm guilty on that.
okay.
What happened is the small deck which was there just was breaking off. And, I guess it's just,
So you did your own
it
thing.
was not intentional, but it just happened.
You made a repair, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, you hired somebody and you put it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look
Everybody
into it.
does
We'll
that.
look to clear that up,
All right.
for 2 weeks out.
Just so we have for the next meeting.
Absolutely. Now, just to clarify too, would you like a separate after-the-fact filing, or can we roll that into this?
I think you would roll it into this, and generally, there's an after-the-fact filing fee penalty, but you could just roll it all into one. I don't see a reason
Understood.
for there to be
Okay.
more
Yep.
filings.
No questions, Doug?
And I
All
think, leave it up to you to what kind of monumentation, if you
Sure.
want to discuss that with your client.
Sure, yeah,
So you know
absolutely.
what direction that we're heading, I believe.
Mhm.
So we're going to continue to the 24th?
I don't know if there's any abutters who are.
Is there any
interested.
butters here for Beaver Brook? No, none.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So the
Aye.
24th is good for you?
It's good for, yeah, it may not be me, it might be
Might not be
TJ,
you.
but I'll bring him up to speed, though.
Very good.
Great, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, next one is 242-1692, an amendment for the COC request for 1210 Osgood Street.
No COC request. New amendment to the order of conditions.
Yeah, amendment to the OOC.
It shouldn't say anything.
Okay.
Yeah, OOC,
OOC.
right, not COC.
Looks like
Sorry.
Does it? Okay. Sorry.
Kind of hard to give it COC when it isn't even built yet.
Oh, see.
Oh.
All right.
Joe, what sheet of the plan would you like up there?
We find one just an initial overview.
Overview? Yep.
That works.
That one.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Brown from Princeton Properties. I thought a little background to why we're here might help you understand the nature of our seeking an amendment to a prior order of conditions. We were before this board in the fall of 2016, as well as the planning board, to approve a mixed-use development. We've received all those permits. We received special permits from the planning board. We received an order of conditions from your board. They allow for a mixed-use development, which is a combination of commercial retail on the front and residential in the back. So the plan that you're seeing there, the first 4 buildings in the front are commercial retail. One is going to be a bank, and the second is going to be a restaurant, then the rest will be marketed commercial or retail in nature. Then there's a separating driveway, and in back you'll find 4 buildings that are residential apartments, 192 residential apartments. We have a clubhouse and a pool off to the left or southerly side of the property. The 2 projects share a common access drive that you can see there coming into the turnaround area, and also to the far right or north is a common access drive as well that circles in and out of the property. So again, we received all those permits back in 2016, and actually your permit was January of 2017. And as we went into developing this site, we recognized it has a unique topography to it. The site slopes from the highest point on the front to the lowest point on the back. It similarly slopes from a high point southerly? No, I'm sorry. So low point southerly to a high point northerly. So we had these conflicting topographies. Our initial plan was to bring in lots of fill, level out the areas where you can see these large buildings are located, and also, as you can see, connecting these buildings are what we call these pedestrian corridors. And so that was our initial plan. As we went into development and started speaking to contractors, we soon discovered that this was becoming impractical to have this much fill brought into the site. So we went through a re-engineering of the site and essentially have lowered the entire site 2 to 3 feet across the entire site. But in doing so, we haven't changed anything with regards to the development itself. The buildings remain where the buildings are. The size of the buildings remain where the buildings are. You know, the buildings do not increase in the number of units, their size, anything. The amount of impervious and the location of the impervious is just as you see there on the site. So that's what really led us here tonight, that as we've gone through this change in the elevation to the site, we're seeking an amendment of the order of conditions. Similarly, we're seeking an amendment of the special permit with the planning board, and we've been before them once, and we'll be going back on the 16th. In addition to working through all this engineering, it's quite a complex site, so we've also continued on with the permitting process. We have a MEPA certificate of no project change. We've worked with MassDOT to design, as the site is on Osgood Street, as you can see that access drive, as it comes out on the other side of that access drive is Barker Street. So one of the concerns raised during the public hearing process was the traffic issues. So we worked extensively with DOT to design and approve a traffic signalization, some widening of the roadways, dedicated turn lanes, things of that nature. We are in the final stages of DOT approval of that. Along with the DOT process, we started working with Eric Kafori and other members of the town administration on seeking a MassWorks grant to assist with both this traffic improvement and to combine other improvements along Osgood Street that are unrelated to the project. And fortunately, through Eric's hard work and lots of other people in this building, the town was awarded a MassWorks grant in the amount of about $2.7 million. So that will include not only the traffic improvements that you see here, the signalization and the widening of the roadway here right along the sight line, but part of the improvements are also to extend sidewalks approximately 900 feet southerly on both sides of the road to the Butcher Boy Shopping Plaza area, and additionally about 250 feet northerly to, there's a insurance building, I believe, and a florist shop. So this is all part of the MassWorks permit. This is all part of the MassWorks grant that has been awarded to the town. We will work with the town and DPW to coordinate that development through public bid contractors hired by the town. So that's how we've gotten here. We are making great progress in the site and are hopeful that we'll be able to start development hopefully this spring, early summer. With the change in the elevations of the site, it did affect some of the stormwater management features of the site, and we recognized this well in advance, and working with Gene Enright and Jen, contacted your peer review consultant, Lisa Eggleston, I believe, starting in November, to start to get her impressions of these changes. And so there's been a series of letters, comments, changes, revisions relative to the stormwater management system. And rather than me try to explain them, I will turn it over to Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, for the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. Essentially, the genesis of the change, as Jeff said, was the quantity of fill that needed to be imported. This was definitely an import site to raise the site, to get the pedestrian connectivity between the commercial part and the residential part. You couple that with fairly high water table. We had water table at 2 feet below the surface pretty much throughout the site. We had 13 separate systems on site, and spread out through the site. So there was an attempt made to not only consolidate those systems into fewer systems, but potentially look at a different product that would provide more flexibility. And the product that we had originally designed the system, the underground infiltration systems with the plastic chambers, the plastic arch chambers. made by StormTech and ADS. Those come in several sizes, but they kind of jump from 16 inches high to 30 inches high to 45 inches high. So it didn't offer the flexibility to be able to work work with the groundwater and work with the site contours. So it was brought to our attention that there was a product called Rainstore 3, which essentially is a stackable system that can each level of the system is 4 inches, and it can be stacked from 1 high to as many as 15 high. So with that, we were able to provide that flexibility, move things around, and affect the drop in the amount of fill on site. With that, we had originally looked at using hydrodynamic separators to treat the water before we put it into these systems. Lisa Eggleston had an issue with the ability to maintain this Rainstore 3 product, and felt that the hydrodynamic separators were not appropriate. So what we've gone to is a StormTech isolator row treatment device, which is a filtration treatment device. Prior to these systems, we get the full 80+% TSS removal prior to the systems, and essentially we'll have zero sediment loading in the systems. And she was satisfied with that change. Essentially, where she had done a preliminary review and believes that we are compliant with the 10 stormwater standards with this change to the isolator rows, and we're winding through the finalizing one last concern that she had, which was maybe putting too much infiltration in a concentrated area. If I might just show a couple of exhibits. This is the original design. We're depicting the 13 different systems throughout the site. We did, in the original design, have some closed pipe systems. The pink systems here are closed pipe systems. They were the ones with the bay filters on them, and there was a lot of discussion during the approval process of the treatment prior to these closed pipe systems, and we had gone with ultimately went with a bay filter system, which was complicated, which was costly, which was difficult or costly to maintain. So the blue areas that are shown on this were the infiltration systems. The proposed systems not only have the flexibility in 4-inch height stacking, but also have some flexibility with the total shape of the system, so they can kind of get odd shaped. So we had the systems, the original design submitted to the planning board was for the systems in the kind of northwest quadrant of the site. Lisa asked if we could, her concern was concentration of infiltration. She asked if we could find some upgradient areas. So in the revision that was submitted to this commission for this consideration, we added the 2 solid blue systems upgradient to that. I think Lisa had a conversation with Jen today and feels there might be some room to to expand some more, to do some more upgrading infiltration, and we're happy to talk to her about her ideas to do that. But again, from the standpoint of the 10 stormwater standards, that proximity of infiltration really doesn't come into play. We meet the recharge requirements. We actually increase the amount of recharge because, as you see on this plan, we don't have any more closed pipe systems. It's all infiltration. So we went from 62,000 cubic feet of infiltration storage to about 77,000 cubic feet of infiltration storage. We didn't have to increase the, it's not more volume on site, it's just that all of it is infiltration without the closed pipe systems. The discharge points, the north discharge points did not change. Here and here. The system, the discharge point behind building D did not change. There was slight modifications to the discharge points around wetland A. You could see the discharge point from the original plan to wetland A was here and here, and on the new plan, it's pulled back a little bit here, and it's a little further to the north here, but not still outside the no disturb, and just inside the 100-foot buffer. But the retaining walls that were around the perimeter of the site are still there. They're still in the exact same location as they were on the plans that were approved by this commission. They're just not as high by 3 feet, in some cases 4 feet. But again, as Jeff said, no changes to any of the horizontal, the location of pavements, the quantity of parking, the quantity of impervious, the location of all of those improvements. All the changes happen underground.
Thank you.
It might be helpful from an analysis standpoint that we've determined we're able to eliminate 125,000 cubic yards of fill, eliminate 8,500 truck trips in and out of the site. And one of the concerns with the planning board was the visibility of the site from Osgood Street. So by dropping the site and its natural sloping to the back, we've addressed one of the planning board's concerns, which is making the apartments less visible from that intersection at Barker Street and our access drive. Mike Howard is here from Epsilon, and
well, I want to get comments from the commission from Joe's presentation. Jack?
Yeah, I do have some questions. I'm glad you pointed out the differences in the outfalls, because I knew that was a change. I think I have the same general impression that Lisa and Jennifer had on, you had a more widely dispersed subsurface infiltration system in the previous submittal, and it's much more concentrated now. So I get it. I believe you that you meet all the stormwater standards, and it's based on design and everything like that. In the end, it has to infiltrate into the soil. And I guess my first question is, are you proving by test pits and percolation rates that this will work? Do you have enough test pits down there that?
Yes, we have enough test pits, and I think there's no question that it will work. Lisa's concern is the travel time from where the water goes into the ground now to the wetland. And you know, I understand and appreciate her concern. The issue that we grapple with is there are no standards for that. There are no ways to quantify that, and if we could quantify that, we have no parameters in which to say we're in an acceptable zone, acceptable range, or we're not. I think that we can all probably surmise that the groundwater heads in the same direction that the topography heads, in kind of a northwest direction. I think that we can all somewhat agree, and Mike can add to this, that the 3 wetlands that are out there are groundwater seep wetlands. It gets to the point where the groundwater comes up out of the ground. So the groundwater is going to still travel in the same direction to feed those wetlands, and we're balancing the rate and volume that we're discharging with the amount of water that we're putting into the ground. So some of it's going surface, some of it's going subsurface, just like it does today. If the water lands on the surface, it goes, it soaks into the ground, and if it can't soak into the ground, it runs over the ground. And we do all these calculations to look at the pre and post. And your local bylaw requires that we look at the pre-development rates, the pre-development volumes for all the storm events, and we try to balance and match that. So we're doing all that in the same way, and it's just a matter of what is in Lisa's words, are we doing the best we can to mimic existing conditions?
So the standard actually says to mimic or follow the hydrological regime of the existing site. So if you think about water falling on the site today, it infiltrates across the entire site. It may run off also on the entire site, and I mean, I would disagree. There may be groundwater seep for these wetlands too, but they're also the low point of everything around. I mean, it's just a natural place where all the water goes. The concern is that when water seeps into the ground across an entire site during extended periods of drought, those wetlands are continually fed by those groundwater sources from the front of the site all the way to the back. If you concentrate all the infiltration at the back of the site in extended periods of drought, there isn't that natural flow of water continually down the site. It's all at the bottom of the site, and potentially, you know, not providing those sources of hydrology for the wetlands over a longer period of time. I mean, I don't think when anybody develops a site to this extent that you can mimic that hydrological regime exactly. I think what Lisa's saying is, let's try to see if there's more opportunity to infiltrate some of that water at the top of the site and not all of it at the back. I don't think because the wetlands are hydrologically connected that it's a condition of starving any particular wetland of its hydrology. It's just more of a matter of balancing out the regime from today's to the post-development standard.
If I can just kind of restate that, it sounds like if this modification has any potential, it would be to starve that A-series wetland on the south end of the site.
It's sort of the far right one is a pond, the farm pond. The first one coming from right to left would be the one that I think loses a little bit of its hydrology, if you want to put it that way, under this. I think that was the case in the prior iteration of the plan as well, that there was somewhat of less water going to that particular wetland than in the pre-development conditions.
Yeah, so it's going to be a focus of her analysis,
and I don't think it's a make or break. I think she's confident that they can come to some agreement on that.
Well, it's important, I think it's important to do the best we can on this, because this is basically a fully developed site. I mean, there's barely a square inch of impervious surface on this site, and I think that stormwater management becomes more and more important the more build-outs you have. So we should be careful on this one. My only other question was, looking at the details of this rain store device. It looks like it's more congested than any of the ones that I've seen in the past. You know, they seem to be sort of, anyway, this one looks like sort of an inverted egg crate stacked up, you know, in several layers. I get why you're using them, but are they clean? How do you clean those? How are they maintained?
They have inspection ports, and you can go down through the inspection ports and clean them. But there is a concern with how effective that maintenance is, and this is why Lisa said you're not. I'm not gonna be okay with any kind of pre-treatment that includes a hydrodynamic separator, because she felt that separator, while it separates a certain size particles, it could let particles into that system. So she wanted a filtration, which essentially is going to put clean water into those things.
So that's your maintenance.
So that
Your
we don't
maintenance
have to.
point.
We don't have to. That's our maintenance point.
Yeah,
We maintain those systems, and those systems are. There's no question that they're
Sure,
maintainable.
sure.
So.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You definitely don't want sediment into these lattices because it's just trapped. So, okay. No more questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go real quick here because we got a lot of work to do after this one. When you guys were in front of us originally for this project, one of the things that we spent probably a month on, and you hung your hat on, was the original StormTech design chambers that had proprietary filters, that you had a BMP maintenance plan with the company that manufactured them. That was the big sales pitch that you brought to us on the table.
Yep.
We spent 4 weeks on that subject alone. And the entire site was designed around that system.
Yep.
Now, that system's out?
No, that system's actually not.
Didn't I hear you say that we were abandoning StormTech?
We're abandoning the StormTech for the volume recharge, but we're using those StormTech isolator rows as our primary treatment. That's the filtration treatment that we're utilizing, up gradient of all of these Rain Store 3 products.
Yeah, on the high side of the property.
So no, on every single system. There's essentially what it is the water will go down towards one of these 8 systems. It'll get diverted into a StormTech isolator row for its treatment. And the outfall from that will go into the Rain Store 3s. So when the StormTech system that we utilized first, it has 2 components. It has the treatment portion, which is the isolator row, which is the filtration device. The rest of the chambers in that system are purely volume to meet our recharge requirements and to meet our attenuation requirements pre to post. So all we're doing here now with the current design is replacing that storage attenuation volume with the Rain Store product. But the StormTech, the isolator road, the maintenance protocol on that is exactly the same.
You're not abandoning. Okay, I'm going to, thank you. I'm going to not ask any more questions until, I'm going to wait for Lisa's full review on this, but I appreciate your answer on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Al. I'm, you know, because this state-of-the-art storm water system, so in my head. So I'm going to rely heavily on Lisa's recommendations and that her issues are addressed. Also, when I was, the last meeting we were here, we were talking about the fill, and that you were going to give us what you were going to use.
Yeah.
Because your storm chambers are going in this fill.
Yeah, and those details are the same as we had finalized, and we have special fill noted on the plan underneath the systems, and a fill specification for the rest of the import fill that has to come in.
Okay, and also we talked about a pre-construction when you hired a contractor so that we can discuss about that big fill. I know, at one time, I think it was a 16-foot wall, so you're saying it's gonna be down like 12, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a big fill.
No, and part of the genesis of this issue and the costing on this was discussions with the potential contractor that will build this. And so not only are we trying to work to make it economically viable, but we're also addressing the constructability issues that the contractor's bringing to the table. And the quantity of fill was very concerning to them just because of the sheer time frame that it was going to take to truck in all that fill and place all that fill.
Would have took you a year.
Yeah, so the contractor actually said that through the reduction of the fill, we took 3 months off the construction period.
Okay, I'm still interested in that stuff. I can appreciate you wanting to change the project because of the fill issue to begin with. But I'm gonna wait for Lisa's recommendations and that they're addressed accordingly.
To be clear, Lou, we're not, just so the record's clear, we're not asking for relief from any of the conditions that are in the order right now. We're asking the commission to adopt this revised plan. So those things that we committed to in the past, we remain committed to those conditions.
Okay, I agree. But, you know, I'd like to see it in writing.
We understand.
You know, I mean, I trust, I'm old school. I trust people's word, but you still gotta have it. This is a very intense project, which you can attest to. Okay, Deb, no further questions? So we need a motion to continue, because you've got planning too, right?
Yeah, I think planning here's this next week. I anticipate that by then we'll have Lisa's review. You know, the applicant's interested in closing this as quick as possible, so I will, like the last project, plan to draft and have something ready for the next meeting.
Is 2 weeks reasonable? Is that what you requested?
Please.
We're before the planning board next week, and before Lisa will have her comments, so at least we can summarize to the planning board that we appear to be closing the gap on the issues.
All right, very good, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. COC 242-1117, COC request for 213 Berry Street.
So this project is quite old, issued in 2002. It's for repair of the septic system at the front of the house. You have some photos in front of you. There is the record as-built plan is from 2005. Don't ask me why it sat around that long. Maybe you have insight, maybe you don't. But Hancock has prepared the certification letter and is here to address any questions. But just from a site inspection and speaking with the health department, the system was not constructed entirely as required. It was constructed with a wood retaining wall rather than a concrete retaining wall around the structure. That being said, the house is for sale, and any improvements to the house would require a Title V and bringing the system up to grade. So I think the fact that it's non-compliant, everybody knows that, and likely nothing's going to happen without it being upgraded. So
So why are we here?
they need a certificate of compliance
To do what?
due to the sale of the house, I would suppose.
But it's not in compliance.
It's not
You
compliant.
just said it's not in compliance.
The system is compliant. It received at the time it was constructed, received a certificate of compliance from the Board of Health. It is constructed in the exact location and all those things that it was supposed to. But right now, if you can see the photo of the house, anything that needs to happen in this place, that system's gonna have to be brought into compliance with Title V. But I don't think any reason to hold up the certificate of compliance. The system is in place and has been there since 2002. It's constructed in the right location. The fact that that wood retaining wall would not meet today's standards, it must have met then standards because the Board of Health gave it a certificate of compliance. I'm just saying, that it is currently not compliant and will need to pass Title V for any improvements to happen. I don't think there's anything that the commission has to be concerned about. It's a Board of Health issue, not a Conservation Commission issue.
It's an approved wall around that was constructed of wood, not concrete. Did the Board of Health approve the?
They approved it, yes.
They approved the wall of wood.
They required it,
Yes.
rather. You're saying the wall was...
I'm not saying they required it, I'm saying when it was constructed, they signed off on it.
Who ordered the construction of the wall? Us or them?
It was driven by them installing a new septic system, which was Board of Health.
So it wasn't in our order of conditions?
I can,
The plan was probably in our order of conditions.
Well, no,
and
the
it
reason why I'm
probably has
asking,
stone wall.
if we're the ones that required the wall, and the wall is not...
no, the system required the wall, I would assume. Again, none of us were here when this happened, so.
None of it, I'm sure somebody was here.
Oh,
What-
actually,
Wait, what year was it?
2002?
Yeah, there were more than,
Some of you
there
were
were
here.
more than a couple of us here then.
Let's see.
Come on.
Well then, come on, bring it up. Don't you remember?
Just make this past the stink test, or either make it past the stink test, or let's bounce it out of here, come on.
I think, well, when we discovered this, we went to the Board of Health, and they said they issued it a certificate of compliance when requested. So,
Did this?
I'm telling you, right now, it says construction of a well and an upgrade subsurface sewage disposal system, including a force main in the buffer zone to border vegetated wetland.
So we approved the installation of the system.
Correct.
We didn't have anything to do...
You did not say anything about a
We
wall.
had nothing to do with the wall. That wall's not our responsibility.
Plan of record. Looking for something, it was 50 feet away.
Yeah, it looks like
There are
septic
some
tank's 50
details
feet.
on the plan.
I just want to make sure,
No, I know.
you know,
I find that
I don't want to get a phone call
There was
tomorrow.
a pervious barrier. The plan does show a concrete retaining wall.
Okay, so they're in a violation.
Yeah,
Well, it's just not in compliance.
well, so we can't.
Significant words.
Well, for the record, I'm Kyle Lally with Hancock Associates. I suppose a few of you were here at the time of this order of conditions. I was not. I believe I was 11. But yeah, we called out the retaining wall being a bit different on the certification letter by the PE, who was Vashek Talako. And yeah, the main difference being it's timber instead of concrete, and they actually they graded out two sides of it. And instead of being the full retaining wall on all four sides, only on two sides now. But we did call that out as a minor deviation from the approved plans.
It's not minor, it's failing.
I'm amused by your use of the word minor, but...
Well, I mean, if you go
but
out
I
there,
don't blame you for trying, Kyle.
you don't step in a puddle of sewage or anything. I mean, the system isn't,
If the wall is on our record plan as a concrete wall, then that would be a requirement under our order of conditions.
the concrete, I'm trying to see which side the concrete wall was it
Definitely on the backside where you show that picture.
between the existing dwelling and the house, correct, is where,
The wall on either side, the street side and
Yeah, there you get, there's the house. And there's
the
a
concrete
wall.
wall only shows on the house side.
But it doesn't show on the picture side,
Which is right where the house is.
which is right where the house is. See the-
Right, that's where the wood retaining wall is.
And it's, so, I don't know, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this one.
All I can say, well, we were uncomfortable with it too, so we went to the Board of Health, who issued it a certificate of compliance. That's all I got for you.
Yeah.
But it's up to you now what you want to do with that.
I don't think.
Yes,
we can
the
look at
plan of
it.
record.
Somebody, you'll see that it's not, it's not,
Yeah, we can't.
you can't. I know it's kind of sucks for the homeowner, but how?
Kyle, I recommend,
So on the plan of record, it doesn't say it up here either, it's in a detail down the bottom.
one second.
I guess I just wanted to sort of walk through, if you don't grant it a certificate of compliance,
I-
we hold up the sale and
We're not.
We're not
nothing.
trying to hold up the sale, but we're also not trying to look like a bunch of morons.
I guess, to not make you look like a bunch of morons, what we did was go to the Board of Health, who
Yeah.
said they find it in compliance, or found it in compliance at the time.
and I appreciate their opinion on that. They look at different aspects of than we do.
Right.
Just
I'm
like
just
we
saying,
look at different things than planning does.
I don't think they would want the system to fail, though, which is what your concern would be, I think, as well.
Never an request for certificate of compliance. They just got the Board of Health sign off on it and went their merry way.
Right.
Which, I'm sure it complies to what they want. I don't question that. But it sounds like we wanted a concrete wall. That's what it sounds like. You said,
Well, I
because it's...
think the plan showed it, whether we required it or not, I have no idea.
Well, let me ask you this. So this just begs the question, and I'm dying to get out of here. If we approve a certificate of compliance on a project that doesn't match the record drawing, wouldn't we have to modify or amend the record drawing first? The drawing doesn't call for a
It's
posted rail.
expired, you can't amend it.
Huh?
It's expired, you can't amend it.
Plus the fact that it's failing. I could see if it wasn't failing, but
Can we continue this for 2 weeks and have Kyle do some research on it for us?
huh?
Is the wall failing?
Yeah, according to Jen's recommendation.
So I'm just trying to think through what happens if you don't grant it a certificate of compliance. What are they gonna do? Are they gonna go construct a concrete wall?
Can we continue this for 2 weeks and have it figured out?
That's
Because
up to
we're
Kyle.
being asked to give a certificate of compliance for something that is, in my opinion, on its face, not in compliance. So-
Right, I just want you to know when we leave here, what am I gonna do in those 2 weeks to change your mind about how this should go?
You're not.
Would you rather see us continue it for 2 weeks or deny it tonight? What do you want? Because,
That's what I'm asking Kyle. I think it's his call.
I mean, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on
To
this.
be truthful, I don't think it's approvable. If
All
we-
right, yeah, well, we can't have it be denied, so I guess we're gonna have to continue it for 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
I'll do a bit more research.
Thank you.
Very good.
That's the best way to go.
All right.
Thank you. So at your request, we will continue for 2 weeks. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very
Opposed?
much.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is enforcement order 440 Great Pond Road.
So, I recall this was clearing along the lake edge. We have since received a restoration plan for your review. It is sort of an interim restoration plan in that the heavy snow and some other extenuating factors have not allowed for the actual delineation, but I think the plan itself addresses all the aspects that we were looking for in the enforcement order, which is basically restoration planting, and monumentation of the 100-foot. So then there are some things in the plan that are left, I don't want to say to the commission's discretion, but are sort of discussed rather than mandated. Removal of the slash, whether or not you wish to see that occur, and removal of a dilapidated structure that's down in that particular area. I did have one question in reviewing the plan. Why sycamore? There isn't any sycamore anywhere around there, so.
Hi, good evening. I'm Bob Prokop from Wetland Consulting Services. With your permission, could I sit down?
Sure.
Oh, you can, right, there's mics here
You sit at the
too.
table and...
No, I just...
I know the feeling.
So you have, they have copies of the plan and your photos, and then here's the plan.
Well, the choice of sycamore is I'm a bit biased on the use of that tree. I did a lot of research on wood ducks, and sycamores, once they get to be mature, are prone to tree cavities and are very, cavities are used by wood ducks. And given that, everybody plants red maple trees and stuff, I thought it would be a nice change. But it's in my opinion, a very nice tree. Takes a while to grow, but once established, it has some very nice features. So if the tree species could be changed, I just thought it would add a little bit of diversity versus your typical white pine trees and red maples and those sort of species.
When you get closer to the lake,
Oh, well-
sort of down at that lowest sycamore, the
syc-
wet feet won't
No,
be
I mean, sycamores oftentimes grow on rivers, banks and stuff, too.
Okay.
So, no, I don't think I think, first of all, where it's proposed for planting, it's going to be well above what would have any impact. I mean, would have any impact on the tree itself.
Right.
And such. So, the other, I think the more controversial part, well, in addition to the plantings, which outside of the sycamore, of course, is the situation with the sash that's on the ground in that abandoned shed, or whatever it is, we're not exactly. In whether or not we need to replant the areas that were cut. I've been retained by Hancock Landscaping, who retained a separate subcontractor who, for whatever reason, took it upon himself to cut the saplings and shrubs near the lake. In one of the photos, and I'm not sure if you have color or black and white, but Jennifer provided some pictures of what the site looked like after it was cut. That would be, particularly, that would be photo A. And whatever the subcontractor, basically cut close to the ground, but he did not disturb the roots. And the plants that were cut were primarily river birch and buckthorn, European buckthorn, common buckthorn, whatever buckthorn name you want to use. I've suggested that we don't replant in the areas that were cut because both species, particularly the river birch, and I pointed this out in my report, are vigorous regrowers, so that, the river birch can grow, upwards of 36 inches in 1 year, the buckthorn to a little bit less, particularly since there's a well-established root system. I really don't see the point of trying to shove some other plants in there, which aren't going to take as well, because these guys are going to sprout pretty well. Now, we could, again, and we probably will have to monitor it halfway through the summer to see if it in fact is resprouting, and at which point then we could provide some additional replanting of the in that area. I had considered trying to control the buckthorn, which is an invasive plant, and short of really using herbicides, which I'm sure you don't want to be used that close to the lake, the only other way is to really just haul it out of drag it out of the soil, and that's going to be extremely intensive. The only other option would be to monitor it go down there every few years and cut just the buckthorn, but you have to have a person who can identify the buckthorn itself. So I think trying to eliminate the buckthorn is sort of a lost cause. So my point is that I don't think it's necessary, at least without reviewing the site, say in midsummer, whether it's necessary to try to replant the cut areas. Similarly, or on that note, there's considerable slash that was left by the contractor who cut it. And while it's unattractive to a lot of people, we could remove it if you wish. But I offered instead to use it to make, what was the, hang on a second here, brush piles. If you're not familiar with brush piles are basically piles of take the slash, you put it in, should I talk? Stop?
No.
Okay. Brush piles are just the way they is described. You take the slash, put it in distinct piles, and they provide considerable wildlife habitat. Similarly, there's this abandoned shed, which is photo D. Not sure exactly what the shed was used for. It's clearly, unusable, I'd say, for most things. The contractor is willing to remove it, but to me, we will, if that's your preference. But I also thought about this afterwards, after when I met with Jennifer on the site, that in itself also provides wildlife habitat. You know, you may not be the critters you want to see running around your backyard and such, but, oops, we lost the picture.
Oh, it's back.
Okay. So, and given that both the shed and the brush piles are a significant distance from the structure, they can provide some significant wildlife habitat. But I'm going to leave it at your, but again, the contractor is more than willing to take out the slash and demolish that, that shed. So, so what I have before you is a, and I put it as a preliminary replanting plan, with my sycamore trees and then various trees and shrubs in the 100-foot buffer zone. That area exists as grassland right now. I think if you go to photo, there you go, there's one shot. So we could replant part of that grassy area within the 100-foot buffer zone with the trees and shrubs listed. We would like to leave, since there's already a gap right there, which is on photo, what's the same photo as behind you? Photo E. There's already a gap in the, that leads right down to the water. We'd like to leave at least a 10-foot gap so whoever uses it would have access to the lake. And then we would provide monuments leading up from the lake within the leaving a space for the 10-foot gap. And that would be marked with granite markers with, or whatever markers you prefer, and labeled no disturb zone. So, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it right now.
Jack?
I guess what I'm not, you know, okay, this whole thing started because there was just cutting, illegal cutting. Okay?
Apparently.
So it wasn't caused by us, it was caused by the applicant and or the homeowner and a contractor.
Subcontractor, yes.
Okay. And so what we've got is, we've got a situation where we don't have the cover that will inhibit the proliferation of the buckthorn, the invasive species. And your suggestions, maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear how you're going to control the buckthorn. You're not going to, right?
No, as I think I pointed in my report, the only ways to really eliminate buckthorn is herbicide use or physically pulling the plant out by its roots. And at this stage of development, you know, where it looks right now, as in the photo behind you here, you wouldn't be able to identify the buckthorn till it grew a foot or two anyway. But there's no easy way to get rid of buckthorn without herbicide application. And I don't think you guys want to do that next to the lake. I mean, I've looked.
I'm just not seeing any improvement here. I'm not seeing any mitigation that improves a very sensitive area in town.
Well,
that we have jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, I guess the mitigation proposed is the additional plantings that are currently in grass right now and such, trying to improve the wildlife habitat by actually retaining the slash, which wouldn't have been there originally if I had not cut it. But I can't see trying to put a 2 or 3 foot tall shrub in the areas that have already been cut, when it's just going to probably be back, you know, by the end of the summer. You'll have a, you know, you could have a 3 foot high.
I guess I don't have any other questions.
Shrub area. It's, I mean, I think we can clearly, if, you know, with permission, do a monitoring, let me monitor the site midsummer to see how well the stuff is regrowing and get a better feel for how much of it is actually is buckthorn. And I would recommend that clearly be monitored. If at that point, when I come before the commission, it's not doing well, then we revise the planting plan to do something in that disturbed area. But at this time of year, and, you know, I have not been out there when it was cut. I can't tell you what it looked like beforehand, but obviously it was pretty thick brush.
I do think in the spring, the slash needs to come out of this area I think then we can assess how much buckthorn is there versus natural plantings. There were some very large rhododendrons in there that are now not there. Those were cut. I think it's hard to assess this area with all that slash there and what's going to come back and what's not going to come back. So I don't think the structure or the slash should stay, and I don't think the planning board's going to think that either.
In fact, I'll add to you. I'd like to see this report go back to the drawing board. I, for one, personally, am not in favor of this report, and I'd like to see the site reanalyzed when the snow melts.
I do think the planting plan and the planting area, having that become part of the no disturb zone is an excellent idea, and I do think that portion of the plan is excellent.
I'm unwilling to accept any portion of it right now, personally. I know I'm only one vote, but what I'm saying is, when the snow melts, look at it again.
Well, we did, this assessment was done when there was no snow.
Okay, well, they're not gonna get the slash out of there now, and they're not gonna get the shed out of there now. Likely, they're not gonna be able to do anything down there until the frost comes out of the ground and the ground rehardens. If they take any equipment down there between now and April, it's gonna sink in and rut out, and it's gonna be a mess. There's no way to get in there unless they go completely by hand. Because once the frost comes out, it's gonna be a soft.
Yeah, the backfield's quite wet.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
It's a clay-based, that's all clay-based soils out there, which is what feeds the lake in the first place. So, it's January, there's no rush now. That's my humble opinion, Mr. Chairman.
I agree also. I would like to see the slash go and the building, because you're saying used for wildlife, but I was looking at the building, one of the pictures, and the roof's already getting ready to collapse. So we're going through all this aggravation right now to kind of stabilize the area. That building isn't going to be standing much longer.
True, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
then what's going to happen is it's going to fall in on itself, and it's going to stay there.
Well, that's why I made that offer. I mean, the contractor was clearly willing to take out the slash,
Yeah.
clearly willing to take out the building. But I just put that as an alternative.
And I agree with Mr. Manzi, we should get all the slash out, get the building out, and reassess what we have. I'm agreeing with Jen with the planting plan outside of the area that was disturbed along the lake. But, I mean, they're all going to be in the way to do what you have to do. 'Cause you're better off starting in the lake and working your way up.
No, so if I may, so can I assume if I revise the plan, we will remove the slash, we will remove the building, I probably won't do it till sometime in the spring, once the snow's gone, maybe even a little, make sure the ground's, I don't know what equipment they'll use, but they'll need something to get down to get the building. Then we can reanalyze the site, decide if we need to do plantings. Once the spring arrives and things start to sprout, then I can get a better feel for how much damage was actually done along the lake.
We want to get it replanted and restabilized before.
So, yeah, I'm not sure we need much stabilization, because everything is still pretty
Yeah,
much
it's pretty-
intact.
They didn't touch anything
Yeah.
ground disturbance-wise. It's
Okay.
pretty intact.
But if we can at least get your okay to remove the slash in the building, then we can reassess it once the snow's gone. And then come back with a revised plan.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna get down there to do it now.
Well, no,
Right, but no, we
he's saying
would give them a
when
date
the
certain.
snow's gone and the dirt dries.
By June 1st or something like that?
I think you'll just have to, I think you're just gonna have to watch and see when it's applicable down there. That's clearly an area where, as the water runs down in the clay base, it's migrating back into the lake, and it's going to be.
There's also a high side on the left.
Sure.
Yeah, so, I think if what I don't want this to do, I mean, it's not going to, and no one's seeking to not address the situation, but I would like to revise the enforcement order to allow them to remove the slash and the structure by June 1st, if appropriate, if ground conditions allow, or something
Sure,
like
make it
that.
June 1st is good.
And then that we will reassess the ability of the cut areas to regenerate and the final planting plan at our second June meeting or something like that.
And that they notify you when they're planning on doing this.
Okay.
Of course. And one other thing, are you okay with allowing the 10-foot wide gap that leads to the lake, along with the monuments?
Yeah, I mean, it's there now.
Yeah, well, actually, it's bigger than what we,
You know, why close it in?
Right, it's
Right.
there now. It's there now.
Serving purpose.
so,
Well, I think, generally speaking, having a buffer along the edge of the water supply is greatly enhances the ability of the buffer to handle the runoff from developed sites. I think,
Let's talk about that in June.
okay.
okay, that's fair.
They are meeting with the planning board at their February meeting, so I think the planning board will give you input at that time too, and we
Okay.
can work it all together into one.
That's fair.
And
Okay.
in addition, I would add to review the buckthorn
Area.
area and removal of it as best as possible.
There's probably going to be a lot of poison ivy down there, too. So, it's, I'm just looking at one of the pictures and showed a lot of,
Believe it or not, there wasn't.
no,
Actually, what there is on the,
on the trees?
Bittersweet.
on the east side, it's pretty much all bittersweet there.
No, no kidding.
Yeah, well, yeah, what a surprise.
Yeah.
You know,
That'll make working there easier.
so-
Lots of nice rushes and sedges
Yep.
and some other things along the water too, but,
Great. All right, do you need a
Thank you.
motion?
Okay,
so motion to continue till our first June meeting or second
Sounds
June?
good, yeah, so moved.
First June.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next one is 25 Hollow Tree Lane, and I am going to defer my vice chairman to handle this because he's already been out there and he's familiar with the issue that's before us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Counselor?
Ladies and gentlemen,
How are you,
John
Counselor?
Regan, representing Mr. Larry Fixler, 25 Hollow Tree. I think that the board has before it the report of what occurred. I will summarize if you wish.
If you want, Counselor, we're in possession of a police report.
In that case, I would have no facts to add to that.
And,
We're here at the court's, at
If
the
you'd
board's
like,
disposal.
well, if you'd like, we can admit the police report
I certainly would ask that.
to the record, and we can make it part of the report that the commission hears, if that's okay with you.
I wish you would.
So the police report, for the record, was submitted by North Andover Police Department Officer Eric Seawade, and it references a call for service received at the police department by Mr. Fixler on December 17th, 2017. Mr. Fixler called the police and asked that they come to his home at 25 Hollow Tree Lane as a result of approximately a half an acre of clear cutting on the Fixler's property, which had been done without his authority or permission. The police department conducted a investigation, commenced an investigation, and notified Jen that he felt that the violation could also have occurred in the wetland resource area on not one but two properties on Hollow Tree Lane. So Jennifer called me and asked me if I would go out there with her and meet with Officer Seawade to review the site to see what had happened. And to just give you a thumbnail of the report without getting into the weeds, Mr. Fixler discovered that this tree cutting had taken place on his property without his authority or permission. That approximately, we don't know the exact size, but it's approximately a half an acre of softwood, hardwood, all kinds of timber was just dropped. The timber was dropped, yarded up, limbed off and yarded up, and prepared to be removed, in some cases removed from the property. When Officer Seawade got there to conduct his investigation, he found that the tree cutters apparently were working for an abutter down the street who had hired them to do work on his property, and so they worked with authority on I'm looking for the name of it.
46 Hollow Tree Lane.
At 46 Hollow Tree, they were hired by the homeowner to harvest timber, which they did. but they did not have authority or permission or a contract to harvest timber at 25 Hollow Tree, which was the home of Mr. Fixler, he's seated here, and his counsel's at the... So Jen and I went out there, met with Eric. We observed the violation, we observed the scene, and then we went down the street to 46, where we met with the homeowner, and he was very cooperative. He took us onto his property, and we walked around and we observed the site. He had hired, Jen, you correct me if I get it wrong, because I'm reading from the report.
Trinity Logging to clear the site, and then Barney Log, I don't, the exact names are here somewhere, to pick up the logs. So Trinity Logging did the land clearing, and Barney picked up the logs. I don't know if both were required to attend per the enforcement orders, but I don't know who is in attendance.
Anybody from either of those companies here tonight?
Barney is logging, yes.
Okay, are you with Varney?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. And just to, do we have it right? Was Varney hired simply to haul away the logs?
Yes, so Barney is a subcontractor of Trinity Logging.
Subcontractor for Trinity. Oh,
Only hired for the transportation of the...
okay, yeah, okay, that's, thank you. Then we do have it right. So Trinity did the actual cutting, and like I said, on, at the Fixler home, there was no authority to do any cutting of any kind, which is why the police department are investigating it as a crime. At 46, there was an agreement between the homeowner, and it was, Jen can tell you the rest of it, what took place after we visited. We took a walk with the homeowner, we walked the site, and we advised the homeowner that we would be asking him to attend the meeting tonight, and I believe you're here, right? Yep, here he is back there, Jim. And Jim, thank you for being here. And Jim was very cooperative with us. He took us around, he told us who we hired, what the deal was. And the violation on Jim's property, we're not sure. We believe it was a violation of the bylaw. There hasn't been a delineation done yet.
I think both violations are buffer zone violations. I think both are cleared up to the edge of wetland. Definitely on Mr. Fixler's property, there was visible standing water. In some areas on Mr. Lally, am I getting that right? His property, that there were, his was a much more extensive clearing. Some of the clearing may be outside the buffer zone, some of it was in. All of the Lally clearing is also within priority habitat, so a MESA filing is required as well. I believe Mr. Lally has engaged a Hancock Associates. Right, so that he's required to delineate, assess whether the stream on the property is perennial or intermittent, so we can determine if there's riverfront as well. All of those things will be determined by Hancock Associates. A restoration plan is required, and the date for that was the 10th, but given the current snow cover, we hit this after the first snowstorm. The second snowstorm, doing any of that work is probably not possible, but knowing that he's engaged someone, I think we need to set a date out when the things can be required.
Yeah.
He was required to put in erosion control by January 4th and clean up the roadway. We did go by today, and the roadway has mostly been cleaned up. There's probably still some things in your driveway, and there's a catch basin in the driveway, but for the most part, the roadway cleanup had occurred, but the erosion control was not installed.
So in addition to, what Officer Seawade, I spoke to him today, and he gave us copies of his report, and what Officer Seawade has done so far is he's taken out criminal complaints with respect to the cutting that was done on Mr. Fixler's property, because it was done without any authority. It's considered to be a criminal trespass and a larceny of the timber. With respect to the Armstrong property, they were hired to be there, so they were there lawfully, just there was no permit in place and no delineation done prior to the cutting. So right now, we're looking for a restoration plan.
And a delineation on that property
A delineation
as well.
and a restoration plan on Mr.
I also think that
Armstrong.
potentially the 25 Hollow Tree clearing is on the property of 487 Winter Street, as well as 25.
That could be, we don't know
Is
yet.
anyone here from Trinity, though? No?
I believe he had car trouble on the way here. He blew a bearing in his wheel. So at this point in time, no, he is not here.
All right, so, I guess this is kind of a complicated matter, because there's simultaneous investigations taking place with the police department and with this commission. Obviously, what we're looking for at Mr. Armstrong's property is a delineation and a restoration plan, and we also, we issued...
Mr. Armstrong is the tree cutter.
We issued cease and desist order, because there was some timber left behind that has value that I believe they wanted to recover. We issued a cease and desist order preventing any activity from taking place of any kind, including but not limited to the removal of the timber, until we were able to sort out who's responsible for what and how it's gonna be handled. So with that,
Well, I think at this point, Mr. Lally is taking responsibility for what happened on his property. He's engaged consultants. I am concerned about the rain event and the lack of erosion control there, so as soon as you can get erosion control down there, because any, further migration of soils off your property into those wetlands is gonna be a further violation that you'd have to clean up.
But
I know the Hancock survey, when I spoke to them, they said they'd come take a look at erosion control as well.
Okay.
so you've got Hancock working for you?
Yes.
Okay, so he's on the way.
Yeah, McMenemy is...
At least he's getting it going.
Right. So the harder thing becomes who's responsible for doing the work required by the enforcement order on 25.
Yeah. Do you, excuse me, Counselor, do you want to have a seat? And
Yeah, I was thinking it would be good if I was
we can ask you questions if you don't mind?
Yeah, and potentially Mr. Varney as well, is
Yeah,
that-
if you don't mind, have a seat and help us out here.
So who, I'm sorry.
And if
who
you don't mind, for the record, I'm Attorney Eastman Varney. I represent Varney, Mr. Varney and Varney and Sons Logging.
And for the record, Varney and Sons was just hired to do the hauling, not the cutting.
Absolutely, just the transportation.
And the cutting was done by Trinity?
Yes.
And is Trinity and Varney, are they subsidiaries of each other, or is there?
No, both separate LLCs.
Separate LLCs?
Yes.
Separate members? Are they members of each other's LLC?
No, absolutely not, no.
So
Not
completely separate
subsidiaries.
entities?
Completely separate,
Separate
yes.
federal EIN numbers?
Absolutely. Varney and
Everything's
Sons Logging
different,
is only a trucking company, employs 2 people, and they are truck drivers. They do
Okay.
not fell trees, they do not operate chainsaws, skidders, or anything like that.
You understand why we're asking this, because
Absolutely, you need to clear it up.
Mr. Fixler's property, I mean, that's a big larceny that took place. It was a trespass and a theft of the timber, and now there needs to be a restoration.
That is a matter of perspective, but, I mean, we are here.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How long do you think it would take to clear a half acre?
Honest to God, I don't know. A day? A day, maybe, if you got in there with
Well-
the 5 days?
That's how long it was reported after.
It took 5 days for him to call the police after to report a trespass.
Well,
But I think the bottom line, really, we're honestly here because this is the trucking company, this is Mr. Varney.
Yeah.
No one contracted with him,
Yeah.
and he is being brought into this. He runs a reputable business in New Hampshire,
Okay.
and he's being brought into this, and it's bringing his name into it, but he has no bearing on any of this. He did not drive a log truck or through the wetlands or anything like that.
well, if he was on the scene picking up...
He was not on the scene. None of these men can identify him.
We have videos of...
Good for you.
A truck with Ronnie's name on it, removing the timber.
But how does that have any bearing on Mr. Varney and the wetlands? He did not drive the log truck through the wetlands.
The timber, the violation was the cutting and removal of the wood in the wetland reserve.
That's right, but
Cutting
no one
of
from...
the wood in the wetlands, but my trucks never went to the wetlands to pick up wood.
Well, I'm not going to argue the culpability with you. I'm not going to argue the nexus of the complaint. That's something that can be handled in court. That won't be handled here.
Well,
Right,
for
but-
this, for the, who does the restoration on
Well,
Mr.
that's-
Fixler's property is the question now. I think
Well, it
Mr.
should-
Lally's taking responsibility for what happened on his property
Right.
and is dealing with that.
Yep. I think right now we're talking about Mr. Fixler's property. Someone is responsible for the restoration.
I think Mr. Lally I spoke with on the phone, he would have some insight into Mr. Fixler's knowledge of the tree cutting on his own property.
Absolutely, and the conversations that he had with Trinity Logging.
But you said you had nothing to do with that, right?
No, we don't.
So are you representing Trinity Logging here?
I am not representing him here, no.
Okay,
She
and
has, in
are you
fact,
testifying?
submitted letters on behalf of Trinity in response to our demand letters.
But I'm not representing him here, no.
But you responded to Counselor's?
Yeah, to a separate civil complaint.
Separate civil.
I think the issue becomes, and I've discussed this with Mr. Fixler's attorney, that he's under the impression, and not wrongfully so, I think why this was being worked out in legal channels, we issued the enforcement order to the logging and the trucking company, only including Mr. Fixler in the letter portion. But I think to resolve this issue from a wetlands standpoint, all three parties need to be listed in the enforcement order so that someone needs to be responsible for the restoration, the delineation, the determination of where this violation occurred in respect to the Wetlands Protection Act. If Mr. Fixler has to do that in the beginning and recoups costs as part of a claim against, I think that's feasible. But at this point, I need you, I've issued these enforcement orders after the site visit with Mr. Manzi and Officer Seawade, so now we need to confirm the enforcement orders.
Who was the enforcement orders issued against?
So currently, everybody, except on Mr., on,
May I
no, on Mr.
respectfully differ
Fixler's
with that?
property, I did not issue the actual, enforcement form. I think it's Form 9 or whatever.
The order is currently addressed to Bonnie and to Trinity. Mr. Fixler is not named as a party in the order. He has, of course, received the same communication. And he does, of course, unfortunately, stand as the first line for how to handle his own property. The question of the cost of doing that is going to be an element of damages in our claim against the other two parties.
Right, so all I'm saying is that the enforcement order needs to include him in the list of, when it's confirmed, so that there is a mechanism. You can appeal that if you want, but it needs to list all parties relevant when it is confirmed. It is. His didn't, that was brought to my attention, and it should.
In which there was
I think
a conservation.
the enforcement order should be
Yes.
sent to the homeowners.
Yeah, in Mr. Lally's case, it was,
Well,
because there was
I
a
was just-
concern about whose responsibility it was on the Fixler property.
But
and-
that's a matter of this attorney here and Mr. Lawler's.
No, we have to issue the form, so I have to issue it to parties. There's no choice in that.
So, Jen, just for,
Two-party what?
To the parties that were issuing the enforcement order against. If
I'm saying you would issue an enforcement order to Mr. Fixler.
right, that's what I'm saying, he wasn't listed in the to section of the initial violation.
And you issue an enforcement order to Mr. Lally.
But we always, in our enforcement orders, include all parties responsible, including those who may or may not have done the work.
so we have an enforcement order issued to Trinity Logging and Land Clearing, okay?
And Varney and Sons, with Mr. Fixler as the homeowner. If you look at the one that's issued to Hollow Tree, it's issued to Mr. Lally, to Varney, and to Trinity Logging,
Yep.
all three.
Okay.
All three.
So it needs to be the same on both enforcement orders, is all I'm saying, when you confirm them. I don't think anything else about the enforcement orders needs
Just
to
a quick
change.
question. Who allowed Trinity to go onto Fixler's property?
Nobody.
To remove
I
the tree?
think that Mr. Lally could testify to that.
James, come on up.
He could definitely testify to that.
Hold on.
Just as a matter of
Listen,
exposure.
this is not a
This is
kangaroo
not a
court.
court of
And we
law.
understand
Hang
that.
on for a second.
We understand that, but to answer the
Listen,
question.
I want you to listen, Counselor. The meeting is run from and through the chair, not from the witness stand.
My apologies.
If we want that gentleman up here to testify, we will call him. I'd ask you to just be respectful of the proceedings, okay?
Yes.
All right, that's the way we have to proceed. Now, at this point, what our administrator wants us to do is both ratify and amend the enforcement orders to include Mr. Fixler as the property owner on one of the sites of the violation. Do I have that right?
Correct.
All right. So which one of the enforcement orders needs to be amended?
That's for 25 Hollow Tree Lane. Just to include Larry Fixler in the to column of who the enforcement order is issued to, because it's the court that will ultimately decide responsibility on that particular property, but we can't leave anybody out of who the enforcement order is sent,
All right,
is issued to.
So on the enforcement order, just so we amend the correct one,
It's the one for 25 Hollow Tree Lane. That's the only one that needs to be amended. The rest just need to be confirmed, the cease and desist and the one
okay,
for 46.
so,
And 46.
all right, so why don't we entertain a motion to amend 25 Hollow Tree
May I
Lane?
be heard very briefly before?
Yes,
motion, sir?
yes, sir, yes, Counsel.
It may be pro forma, and I understand the reason for wanting to have him on the order. But insofar as the circumstances, in our view, place responsibility on others, I would like the record to reflect that we object to having him named as a party.
So the record is reflecting that as we speak, both audio and visual.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
I think that also we would, I mean, I think that if we could have the opportunity, we would object also to having Barney and Sons logging. I understand that you have said you have to have all parties, but we would object because no damage to any wetlands was done by any logging truck company. So
Well,
just to reflect on the record.
if you want to object, you have the right to do that, and our recorder will enter that objection.
Absolutely.
But let me point out that the accusation by the police department is that a felony was committed, and this is a joint venture under the felony. And whether they were on the ground cutting, or whether they were on the street picking up the logs and hauling them away, it was all part and parcel of the same act. And that's a joint venture in any state, including New Hampshire.
So just,
And that's how he is involved in this.
Just to set the record straight, Mr. Varney is not listed in the criminal complaint. That is listed as being James Armstrong, 54 Ridgeview Road. So
No, you're referring to,
Thank you
in the
very much.
criminal complaint, Mr. Varney is not listed.
okay.
Oh, I have not received a copy of the police report, so.
So,
I don't see him listed anywhere in here. I mean, he's listed in the description of what happened yes, you're listed in the description of the events, as are you and I, Mr. Manzi.
Right.
But
right.
he is, the criminal complaint defendant is not Mr. Varney.
I'm reading it, Jen, hold on.
This is not.
I'm reading it. Yeah, it's in the gist. They're talking about Varney and Sons Trucking.
But on the first page, where it lists criminal defendant,
Right.
that is...
Well, this is not a complaint application. This is just a police report.
Oh, okay. I
So-
thought he said, well, no, the first page isn't
This is a summons
Oh,
report.
summons, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's not a complaint application. The complaint application, we're not privy to those.
Okay.
Those will be filed by the department at the district court in Lawrence. We could get copies of those once the court processes them, but we're not entitled to those right now. So I don't know who has been charged with what. I honestly don't know.
I think it would list it.
I have this.
I think it
Okay.
would list him, but.
Right, I'm just saying that the summons
Yeah.
is only for Mr. Armstrong. So at this point, I don't know that the
I got you.
I don't think, according to what I've heard from the police department, that they intend to press charges against Mr. Barney.
All right, so
That's their-
counsel, you guys don't, I have no intention of, other than being here, which is cooperation, you have no
Right,
intention of
absolutely.
cooperating with the restoration plan or assisting with the fixlers in any way?
If I could speak?
Sure, please.
Well, if I'm not listed in the criminal complaint, that means I have no responsibility. I don't understand how you could hold me responsible when I drove to the curb and picked the wood up.
You're listed in the report.
Right, and so was
We
she,
haven't
and
got
so
it.
was he.
Well, we were there investigating, you were there picking up wood. I mean, we're not gonna
Okay.
have too silly of a conversation here. You were working for the company that cut the wood.
No, oh, okay,
You weren't doing it for nothing, right?
Sure.
right.
Okay, so you were working for the company that cut the wood, you were at the site, it's a joint venture under the law, that's the way we treat it here. That's the reason we asked you to be here. and
Absolutely.
now we're just trying to sort it out.
Yeah, absolutely, and we want to.
We consider Mr. Fixler to be a victim in this, and, you know, unless there's some overwhelming evidence to the contrary, that's the way we're proceeding.
Well, we don't get involved in, I think, our job is to get the site restored. Who and how that happens, I guess, is not necessarily.
No, what I see here is two properties.
Maybe three.
No, two properties.
Well, no, there could be a third one, because they could have,
The other property.
Fixler's neighbor, they went over the property line.
Mr. Fixler has a very strange property line.
What we're saying is his property boundary is not clearly defined.
There's gonna be a third one of these out there.
There could be. We're
We
waiting
can't determine,
for
we need a survey.
Let's assume.
we're waiting for a survey. We're waiting for an RPLS to do a survey to show us.
When they do that,
Yeah.
then we'll know.
Then we'll know,
But
yeah.
for the time being, we know there are two,
Correct. Yeah.
okay? So the two property owners should be cited.
Well, they have,
Each property owner is cited.
right.
The contractors that were on the site doing the work, whether they were cutting trees or picking up wood, should be cited because they're part of the process.
Sure.
Now, the courts will deal with who's responsible ultimately. If the person who hired the contractor to cut the trees and you know, I assume the cutter of the trees hired the hauler.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, whoever initiated this process, if that's that gentleman over there,
Yeah.
then, you know, he may ultimately be paying the price for this because he's gonna be subject to a lawsuit from the party that
Oh,
says,
no,
you were on my property cutting trees without my permission.
Well,
Not
their
Mr.
properties aren't next door to each other.
Well, whether they're next door to each other or not.
Mr. Lally didn't authorize cutting on Mr. Fixler's
Right.
property.
Yeah, so
That's
what
clear.
happened on the Fixler property
Then
is on,
there's gonna be a lawsuit that goes after the contractor who went amok in his,
so I guess
trees.
and
But
that'll be,
that's nothing to do with us.
so all we're trying to do is get our enforcement orders correct.
To the property owners on which the damage to the.
I just had one more thing.
Sure, Doug, let me just, go ahead.
And you spoke to Mr. Fixler being the victim. I'll just get up from the table and I'll walk out. I think we should listen to Mr. Lally.
He's next on the list.
His turn.
We're going to, right now, for the purpose of this proceeding tonight, we're going to amend the process.
Okay.
And
And he's next on the list anyways to be heard, so,
who is?
Mr. Lally.
Yeah. Okay, so Jen wanted us to amend the enforcement order to include Mr. Fixler on the enforcement order, so I need a motion.
So moved.
And to confirm the rest of the enforcement order as written.
Well, let's amend first, and then we'll ratify everything.
Okay.
Okay. So I need a motion and a second
So moved.
Second.
to amend and add Mr. Fixler to the enforcement order as a party. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Now,
Just on a side note, Jen, his attorney is disputing the,
yeah, we got the objections noted.
Yep.
The objections have been noted not only on the record, but on the telecast as well.
MassDEP will 100% let you know that you always have to include the homeowner in the violation.
Okay, so now-
There's no way to avoid that.
I have 3 enforcement orders here that need to be ratified before we can go any further. I'll try to get them correctly. They're not numbered, are they, Jen?
Well, I think we haven't let Mr. Lally to the table yet, so I think we're voting on 25 to, 25 Hollow Tree Lane to approve confirm the enforcement order as amended, which requires a delineation to be conducted, an existing conditions plan, showing buffer zones and property boundaries, and then to appear at this hearing. The only thing now we need to do is set a date of January 10th for the submission of that delineation and plan. I think we need a date certain by which it will be required.
No, we're talking about which, both properties?
We're only talking about 25. We need to keep them separate because there are separate requirements for each.
Okay. So 25 Hollow Tree Lane.
We need a new date by which the delineation and plan will be submitted.
I would give them 30 days unless you.
I mean, I think 30 days is a minimum.
Yeah, because you're not gonna get it done.
You got difficulty in this weather to get out there and do the survey.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what, we need a date certain. That's what I'm asking you to discuss and pick a date. I mean, it is
Would it
gonna
be-
rain and somebody could get out there potentially in the next couple weeks.
What you're asking a delineation to be performed
In a survey.
in a survey. 30 days minimum.
Give them 60. I don't care, but we need to put a date certain in the
30
enforcement
days.
order is all I
Might
care.
not be enough.
No,
April
I think
1st?
60.
No,
Well,
how
then they
about-
can ask for continuance.
What's the first meeting in
90 days.
What's the first meeting in February, or the second meeting in February?
We either have it's either the second or the fourth Wednesday of the month.
So
Well, the next meeting is the 24th.
why don't we make it the second meeting in February? How's that?
So we got a 3-week venue for the next meeting,
Hold
right?
on, calendar.
And then,
After the
if the parties need more time, we can grant it.
So February, the meetings are the 7th and the 21st.
So would the 21st be acceptable for now, just to get it going and give it a date?
It's fine by me, 2018.
Right, so we got the 21st.
So February 21st, which is the second meeting in February, for compliance with the enforcement order regarding a delineation.
In a survey.
And a survey.
I mean, as laid out in the enforcement order, which you have in front of you.
Okay. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's unanimous. What's next, Jennifer?
Would be 46 Hollow Tree Lane. Oh, I mean, I don't know, Mr. Varney is listed in the cease and desist, that can be confirmed. That's just saying, don't work in town without following the tree removal policy. He doesn't remove trees, so I'm not really sure how it applies to him, but it also prevents him from retrieving any more wood from the site. So the cease and desist, you could confirm. I don't know that any further action is needed on it at this point.
You want the cease and desist ratified? Is that what you want?
Well, I issued it, so
If you want.
I issued it on your behalf, so if
Okay,
you
so-
believe it needs to be issued, then you should ratify it.
Okay.
So moved.
Motion and a
Second.
second. Any discussion? There is none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that is unanimous. The cease and desist is ratified.
And then the next, and last matter on the agenda is 46 Hollow Tree Lane.
Again, we have an enforcement order for 46 Hollow Tree Lane that needs to be ratified. I need a motion and a second.
I don't know if Mr. Lally wants to say anything before you do that, as you gave Mr. Fixler the opportunity to. I don't think it means you're not going to, but we need a new date on that one as well.
We're giving him, the ratification is going to give him till February 21st to get his delineation done and his survey. So it's going to be the same as the other enforcement order.
Okay.
I need a motion and a second.
I move to ratify with the revisions stated.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is unanimous. Do you want to speak? Sir? Just introduce yourself, and you're on the record.
Sure. My name's Jim Lally. I'm the homeowner at 46 Hollow Tree Lane. So just wanted to clarify, I guess, and if this is an inappropriate forum for it, then please let me know. Just kind of clarify all of what happened with all the properties listed. Initially, I contacted, just looking to get some trees removed behind my house. There were a couple that were in danger. I was traveling for work when I got a call saying, hey, we were going to look to schedule you in the spring, but finished the job early. I'm literally in the neighborhood. Do you want me to come by and start? I said, yeah, I think so. Let me. And this was from Trinity, James Armstrong and Trinity Logging.
So just for the record, when you called and contracted, you contracted with Trinity?
He was the one that contacted me, yes.
But that's who you talked with, that's who you made your agreement with?
Yes.
Okay.
Trinity. So then he came out to the property. My wife ended up meeting him. I was supposed to call him back. I was traveling for work. I called him to a meeting. It's kind of a long story. He had started cutting that morning. We had given him the verbal okay to start. He went through. I called him later because I had tried to contact the town And just to find out if there was something that needed to be done, they said, oh, you have to find out if you're within 25 feet, 50 feet, kind of ran through the procedure with me. At that point, I was going into a meeting. By the time I called, he had already kind of cut a line down because it was several hours later, so I was kind of unable to stop him. I said, I'm really concerned about this. He said, oh, well, we try to maintain, 100 feet from the wetland. Well, there was some confusion there with the term wetland, where he believed it was from the physical water instead of the actual wetland.
25 foot.
Was that?
25 foot.
Yes.
The bordering vegetated
Right.
wetland
The-
associated with the
yeah,
river.
25 feet from the vegetation area, not just the water. So there are some cases where there may be, and very highly likely, trees within that 25 feet. Over the course of time, he did speak with several neighbors, to include Mr. Fixler, about if they wanted trees cut. Mr. Fixler's property does not abut mine. He did speak to the three, or at least two of the three that abut mine. They said no. He didn't take anything there. I know I was working from home. I saw Mr. Fixler approach him, ask him to come take a look. They looked at the property. Trinity spent 2 to 3 days at the Fixler's residence with equipment out there overnight, and it wasn't until I found out several days later after he had left and cleared those trees when Mr. Fixler contacted me to ask me what was going on. And initially I wasn't sure what he meant. He called me over, was showing me where the trees were cut, and essentially asked me to help him pay for a fence. And I said I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't sure why. And then he hinted to me that if I didn't, he was going to call the police, and he did.
Why would you be responsible for installing a fence?
His exact words were, you brought him into our neighborhood. Okay. I said, well...
You talked to him.
Yeah.
You had discussions with him. You hired him.
Okay.
As a matter of record, Mr. Fixler approached me after he had spoken to Mr. Armstrong from Trinity, saying how thrilled he was that this guy was here. His exact phrase was, you hit the lottery with this guy, and he was more than happy to have him take as much as he could from his property. So when he contacted me after to say, oh, this shouldn't have been taken down, I was very surprised. And like I said, then I had guests at my house that I hadn't seen in 2 years when the police showed up. So I was a little annoyed that he would go to the police after we had actually what I thought was a decent conversation. And like I said, as Mr. Varney said, it was several days after,
5 days.
5 days after any cutting occurred that he called the police. But
So regarding your property?
Regarding my property, yes.
You prior to having the cutting initiated, there was no wetland delineation done by any certified wetland scientist?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know that I needed anything.
Yeah. So you just...
I grew up in a town with 3 family houses 10 feet apart. Like,
Sure,
there
I
was
get
no
it.
wetland or trees.
I understand. We just have to be clear as to how the thing proceeded, so...
Yeah.
There was no
No.
scientific delineation by anybody that had any actual knowledge of wetlands?
No.
Okay.
What like I said, the logger told me, hey, we'll stay, 50 feet or whatever it was away from the water.
Yeah.
And he cut, if he cut in a line like this, the wetland goes off like this. So the further back you go, the further.
But we really don't know where the wetland goes because it hasn't been delineated yet.
Yes, the actual.
It could break your heart when they get out there and figure out where it is. All right, okay.
But I contacted Hancock.
So let me see if anybody here wants to ask any questions, okay, if you don't mind.
None.
Any questions, Louis? Doug?
No, to me, it just sounds like it's a fight between neighbors as to who authorized what and
Gotcha.
when.
I didn't think it was going to be that until the police showed up at my house, to be honest with you.
I think you take care of your property, then the other person should take care of his property, do whatever's required on his property, and then they can fight it
fine with
out in
that.
court later.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
Unless you have any questions for me on the plan and.
No, I just want to, you understand what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to retain, you said you've got Hancock.
Yes, so what I assume my next few steps are, and correct me if I'm wrong, is work with Hancock for the erosion control sooner rather than later, get the wetland delineation, which she said would the ground might have to be thawed for that, something about an auger and
Yeah,
getting
they
a soil sample.
sometimes they have to auger, yeah.
Right. And then once we have the wetland delineation, we can create the restoration plan.
Correct, that's absolutely correct.
Now, he's doing that for his property.
He's doing his own property.
Yes.
For
And
his
make-
own property.
Make sure they have a
The same
copy
should
of
be
the
done on
enforcement
other
order,
property,
Okay.
so they know what is being asked.
If that's
Okay.
within the wetlands.
Is Hancock going to place the erosion control?
They have the capability of contracting that. I mean, most likely they'll find, you know, a Middleton Supply or
That's something
somebody.
they can do, if you
Yeah.
ask them to do that for you, they'll do it.
We would ask you to.
Is it something I can do myself?
Yeah, you can find a contractor and get the erosion control installed. Just because of the proximity to wetland, don't put down the plastic netting stuff. I think I specified compost or bark mulch.
It says it in
filter
the
stock.
order, yes.
Yeah, just make sure you get the right stuff and put it down and you'll be good. And obviously you aren't gonna do anything until spring. I mean, given the thaw, they may be able to do a delineation. I was able to auger when I was out at 16 Beaver Brook. It's all gonna depend on site conditions, but you've hired someone who knows what she's doing and you'll be good from
And
there.
listen, if you need more time on it, just call
Okay.
and request more time. We're not gonna penalize you if it goes over the date. Just stay in contact with us, all right?
Okay.
So I
And I
have
know
to-
that was also an issue with, I know this was mailed on the 20th of December.
Yeah.
I was away from right before Christmas till after New Year, so I got it on the 2nd of January.
Right.
At that point, the second snow had already fallen.
Fallen.
and
I understand,
there
that's
was
why.
very little I could do at that
We'll
point.
work with you, so
Okay.
just stay in touch, that's all you gotta do.
All right.
All right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Okay, I think that's it.
Counselor, do you have anything else you wanna?
No further submissions that, the only business I guess the board's handling is the correction of the orders as you've already voted on?
Well, right now, what we want, yes, we wanted our paperwork to be
Yes.
complete. And,
We have selected an engineer, and we'll be engaging him
Okay.
in the very near future
okay,
for the order. And beyond that,
so you're gonna do the same thing, you're gonna start with a delineation
yeah,
and a survey plan.
we have the same order, and
Okay.
we will endeavor to comply with it.
And again, if you need more time, just notify us, and we'll give you more time.
Thank you, sir.
We're not gonna hold anybody's feet to the fire, we just want it done right.
Appreciate that. We will be taking care of that, sir.
All right, thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
You guys, so you're denying any culpability, I guess, is what you're saying is you're on your own?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Mr. Barney did speak with Mr. Lally, and, you know, he indicated that he was going to take care of what transpired on his property. And, I mean, Mr. Lally knows that he never saw Mr. Barney, you know, come onto his property. He wasn't driving a truck.
No, but you understand, you identified yourself as an attorney.
Yes.
You understand what a joint venture is.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, he didn't have to go on the property, but we're not gonna debate that, because that's not our purpose here
Right.
tonight. I'm just,
No, absolutely. But you also heard what Mr. Lally said, and about the conversations and being
I heard
hired
everything, and I realize
Yeah.
there's gonna be
Absolutely.
a lot of questions asked. There always is. I think, unless, anybody here have any questions of anybody here? or-
I do think you've complied with your portion of the enforcement order, which was to appear.
Right, you told me not to
and
pick
cease
up the
and
wood
desist.
and
Right.
stop.
I do think we need to hear, and if you're a contact for Trinity Logging, we do need to hear from them. They need to have because they have not complied with the enforcement order at this point. They are not present, and they have not addressed the concerns. So the commission does have the ability to issue fines for noncompliance, and that is typically the next step.
So can you convey that to
So-
Trinity?
Absolutely. You can definitely
Do you mind,
convey
if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, no, because I have read the order, and the fines are pretty significant.
Our
and-
goal is restoration. We're not,
Absolutely.
the fines don't really help us.
Right.
We don't get the money doesn't go to us. So
Yeah,
we'd rather
absolutely.
see a restoration done and get the properties cleaned up. So
I can appreciate that.
we can,
So there will be another
If he
hearing.
doesn't
I don't know
respond,
that
I'm
your
sure Mr. C will
attendance
be-
is necessarily required, but
Well-
they should be at it, I would.
what's
right.
that? Say it again.
Trinity, James.
Trinity should be at the next hearing, the February 21st, since we're issuing new enforcement orders.
Well, we're going to send them an invitation and ask them to come down,
But
and if
you
you
just
can...
said I don't need to
Well,
appear?
they've attended. I don't know that they're.
I would say that you don't have to come back unless there's a question that we actually need to ask you on the record, but
Okay.
I don't anticipate that. You're
Okay.
here, you've identified yourself, we know who you are.
Okay.
Just as long as we have a contact number, that's
I
all.
do. Yep,
That's
they've-
really all we ask, And
Okay.
hopefully we can clean it up soon.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
Well, pending the weather, right?
Right.
If you're gonna communicate with Mr. Armstrong, we strongly suggest that he gets in touch with Conservation Department.
Or the police department.
Or the police department.
Yeah.
Because
Sounds like
if
they're
not,
gonna
at
be in
some point,
contact
the
with
police
him.
department's
Well, that's what's going to happen, I'm afraid, and we'd rather see it not go that way. That, like I said, nobody benefits from that. That doesn't get it cleaned up.
Yep.
You know, that's really the goal.
Yep.
So if there's some way to facilitate that, we sure would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do the best I can.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
thank you very much. I guess
Thank
we'll all be
you.
talking again. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we'll keep it in the record. Yeah, we'll keep it right in the record. Jen, these are for your folder, right, these photographs?
I've got one back, that's all I need.
All right, I'll keep one with the police report then. Thank you. Thank you, Larry. What do we got left?
I believe,
Just the budget and the,
oh, I gave the chair and the vice chair a copy of the budget, which includes like our annual report sort of thing. So read it at your leisure, and if you have any questions, it's due on Monday, so that's when I'll be submitting it. If anybody else would like a copy, I'll happily email it around. But it's,
I think you sent it out, right?
I gave it to you guys, I don't know that I sent out I just finished it today, so
Oh, you know what, wait a second, here it is. I got one.
And then I have a question for you, but we can do, it's a generator question I can ask you, just show you the photos after, if you want to wrap this up.
While we sign.
look at this.
Is there anything left on the agenda, or are we done?
No, we're done.
Do we have anything we have to sign?
Yeah, we have the small, no, we don't sign small projects, so new enforcement orders, we have to sign. 3 new enforcement orders.
So can we adjourn?
We can adjourn.
All right, so we need a motion to adjourn, guys?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Ooh,
I'm here.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Was that Deb and Jack?
That's unanimous
Unanimous.
to adjourn.